Welcome to Forever Exiled. I am Justin, aka Tags.
I'm Tyler, Wrecker of Days.
It's weird.
What were you like thinking about?
We're looking at each other like in person. It's not.
No, it's a lot more disgusting than it usually is. Justin has some sort of gorgeous filter that people probably use for their TikToks or whatever. Not in real life.
Not in real life. You get the whole deal.
Disgusting.
Welcome to episode 199, our ExileCon episode. Part 1.
Yes, it is part 1 because we have only seen. How are we doing this?
Day 1.
Right. Our time, Pacific Standard Time. The convention's going Friday afternoon and evening, and then Saturday afternoon and evening. And so we're recording this, part 1, Saturday morning. So we've only seen
Day 1. And not even the pre-recorded, re-released stuff from Day 1.
Right.
We'll be watching that later.
Only seen what Twitch showed on the first day.
Yep.
And we had some buddies over. We actually recorded After Dark first this time around. So if you're listening to this and you're an After Dark individual, we love you very much. Listen to After Dark first.
No.
What? Yes,
no.
Listen.
Hold on. First off,
Tyler says listen to After Dark first and then come back and listen to part 1 and 2.
Don't listen to Tyler. So a big shout out first off to our patrons. Thank you to a bunch of people for resubbing up to our Patreon and getting access to After Dark. We love your faces and really appreciate it. Patreon gets you access to After Dark. It's our podcast after the podcast where it's usually the podcast after the podcast. This week, it just happened to be the podcast before the podcast.
Oh, I ruined it. I did, didn't I?
You didn't.
I was talking to you. You had a whole thing planned.
No, so we did. We recorded it first. We had some buddies come over who were not PoE people, but Tyler and I were getting together, so we thought, why not have some friends over? And so we had some friends over, and then we said, do you guys just want to record After Dark with us? So we hooked stuff up in my living room, just like Tyler and I are doing right now, and we had a chat. It's 2 hours. It's one of our longer After Darks. It was a ton of fun hanging out with them and just chatting, and there's PoE in there, and there was a bunch of other stuff. So it was fun. But yeah, we did record that first, and we'll get into later why I actually think that was a good thing for me personally. And it was good. So patrons enjoy that. It's 2 hours. It was one of our longer episodes. Also, if you sign up to Patreon, you get access to all the past ones. So you can always go back to episode 62 where we had our wives on, which was a blast too. Wives and Chris episode. So anyway, thank you, patrons. We love your faces, and we definitely appreciate the support. And for everybody who's hitting that 5-star on Spotify and Apple Podcast, it's that dopamine hit for us every time we see it. So thank you.
That's right. And don't forget, Just, you get a sticker. And this week, Professor Butts on our Discord.
He put up a video
ExileCon.
That is my favorite video, I think, of all time. It made me so happy watching you. If you're on our Discord, you can see it. It's pinned in the general chat. I have now got a saved copy on my phone forever. And
they sent a video of what they did with their sticker, and it made our day. So thank you, Professor Butts. It was hilarious to see. Somebody just put our GG probably thinks we're like telling people to like plaster our stuff around for pseudo advertisements, but Professor Butts just took their sticker and right on the big sign that points people once you get into the convention center where to go for Path of Exile registration.
Yeah, outside. It was awesome, and his video is so well done because he zoomed in on the sticker and then he pulls out, and it's on this monstrous banner for the Path of Exile registration, and our sticker's right in the middle of it, which is, I mean, obviously they're sponsored by Forever Exiled, but it's literally one of my favorite things ever. So thanks, man. You actually made my day that day. It was such a good video.
Big smile. And hopefully we're still recording this mid convention. So hopefully everybody that listens to the podcast that went to the show, hopefully you're having a fantastic time. Justin's had nothing but wonderful things to say about the last time that he went, and it mentioned many times prior to this convention even starting that it doesn't even matter what they release coming around, that they just do such a good job at their convention. So hopefully you're all having a good time, a safe time, and find that it was all worthwhile for sure.
Yep. And we're super pumped that we're not even going to do this, our week. So don't leave a comment. Okay. We're not talking about our personal lives this week. So just chill. Although personal lives are fine. It was good. I had a good week. It was really fun hanging out with you.
Our personal lives are great. We're doing wonderful.
Yeah, they were fine, but there's just so much to talk about this episode. And, you know, I've only been, I went to bed about 7 hours ago because of editing After Dark. So I'm still waking up. I'm still waking up in the middle of this episode, but it was fun hanging out with Tyler yesterday. We got to watch it, you know, the stuff that we wanted to watch. There was some stuff that we didn't. So we just chatted and made dinner and hung out and stuff. But yeah, I say we just jump right into ExileCon. Sure. I will say though, just like Tyler said, ExileCon when I went in 2019 was an amazing memory. I got to go with my son. He loved it. I had a great time. The event itself is incredible. The people who went, I'm sure you're having a blast. It's a beautiful country. And I think it's cool that we play a game that is not a massive game that can do conventions like that. It's a really cool,
very cool
thing that GGG can do that with Path of Exile. So that's the overall feeling. Like, I just want to get that out there because in After Dark, you probably get a bit more of an unfettered opinion from me regarding it because I was a little bit disgruntled yesterday, but I've had some time. I've had some time to think. So I'm excited to talk about it again today and, you know, get my non-initial reaction because I've had time to consider.
Justin had a nice circle jerk with all of his buddies and now he's feeling great.
Way better. Got that release and I'm feeling so. Well,
hey, as Crew said in Discord, Merry Christmas. I love using that kind of stuff. Like Merry Christmas. Because it's just this is the most exciting time for any PoE player. Whether you are at the convention or only watching on Twitch, it is like Christmas. So
yep, for sure.
Merry Christmas, Justin.
Totally. All right, so let's jump into it. I guess we'll just the thing is, Tyler and I didn't take notes purposefully yesterday. We didn't want to. It makes it really hard to watch and actually enjoy it when you're like constantly trying to remember what we want to talk about. So I think we just hit everything. I think let's just start
where you want and do whatever. Yeah.
So
and the thing about not taking notes, like I really took notes a lot last time because I wasn't taking notes last time because we didn't have the podcast last time. That was 4 years ago. Right. But a lot of the other presentations that they do on Twitch, I've found in the past when I'm trying to take notes, I really miss out on what's happening in front. It's like, you know, the whole parent conundrum of, do I take pictures and videos of this moment or do I enjoy the moment? And, you know, then your kids look at you while you're recording and you're not actually looking at them and you're like, oh, you see it in their face. So anyways, kind of like that. So this time around, I'm the note taker between the two of us and just really wanted to experience it and enjoy it. We had buddies over that do not care at all about Path of Exile, so it's about the fellowship too.
Yeah, and they weren't there until after.
Justin and I saw the keynote by ourselves, and then Ian and Ryan came. But anyway, so yeah, let's just wing it, and then maybe in episode 200 we'll have gone through or been reminded about a whole bunch of stuff if we had a more structured note taking setup, and we can hit a whole bunch of points that we missed. So don't give us a hard time if our memories don't serve us well. But
while in the hot tub.
Oh yeah, that's right. While we're flicking each other's nipples in our hot tub episode for episode 200. I forgot. Yeah, we need to get a hot tub, I guess. Hey,
we're gonna have one. I've already sorted it. Don't worry.
Okay. I know a guy.
I got a guy.
That's right.
So let's go right through. So the event starts. We go through the keynote. I don't really know if we just start spewing.
Do you think?
My first feeling towards the keynote was obviously excitement. Having Chris come out there. I love seeing Chris uncomfortable, like, and excited. Like, he's just got a great, like, he loves what he's doing. And you can actually see it in the way that his facial expressions, his body language, like he's very passionate about his game. And that's so cool.
When he says, thank you so much for your support. We're just really excited that you care about the game that we make. Like, you can hear it, you can feel it. I looked at you and I said, I have zero doubt that's not crap. That is legitimate from the heart. And maybe I was looking a little too into it or even hoping for it. But when he choked up in ExileCon 1, like when you start hearing maybe a tiny bit of the verb in the voice, you know what it's like when you're trying to push the emotions down, but then the tiny bit creeps up. It's just so, like, that makes you just want to cry anyway. Like, who cares what the announcements are or what it's about? When you see anybody just passionate about it and thankful, just like, so yeah, that was cool. Very cool.
I love that you're crying. Just got my dog worked up. So first Crypt comes out and does like they do a look back, and that look back over Path of Exile's history was amazing. I was chatting with Camille last night, And I said to him, like, are you going to release that? And it was funny. This is like, it cracks me up how, we look at things differently than, they do it, they make it, they do all their stuff. And so I was like, that thing through the history of the Path of Exile was amazing. Like, I loved that. The score you had behind that video. I said, are you going to release that? And he was like, well, it's just Legion and what was the other one? Heist, maybe? I can't remember what he said the other one was, but his thing was like, well, it's out. And I was like, yeah, but man, with the voices playing, like, as it was going through, like, it was just epic. It was so,
they had some character voice lines every now and then to kind of coincide with the music.
Yeah. And it, like, it's crazy how easily lost people can become on the score and the music, because if you were to mute during that part, it would not have had even nearly the same effect. If you were just watching, like, it was just so good. I loved it. Like, I get that it's just music that's already released, but the way that they put it together, the way they tied in the actor voice lines from these different leagues and stuff, literally one of my favorite scores, just the way that it was done. So so they did the history, which was really cool to sort of do this walk back and this thing. So then Crip announces Chris. So Chris comes out, does his thanks and his welcome, which was awesome to see.
Oh yeah, hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games, and then
everybody's like,
the explosion in the auditorium. I love it.
Yeah. I was a little bit thrown off when then he just like pissed off and he's like, here's Jonathan and Mark, and both Tyler and I are like, oh, okay. And then John, which was cool. Both of us were like, Jonathan is still there. Like, we haven't seen Jonathan in forever.
Well, wasn't it mind blowing to discover that he's just completely separated from Path of Exile? Like, we discovered this after in a way, but we hear his title, like I forget what it was, game designer or whatever for Path of Exile 2, and Mark's there too. But it was just mind blowing to see that there's been like a complete separation. His knowledge of Path of Exile 1 is
not really there.
No, like, we've been like, when they were talking, this is jumping ahead, but when they were talking about what he wants flasks to be like in Path of Exile 2, we're like, Chris, like, we've had that for like a year, man. And Jonathan's like, oh, I didn't know. Chris will steal whatever he wants. But anyway, they came out on stage and that was great. And
Mark looks great.
Yeah, good for you, Mark. Good for you. That really takes an insane amount of work and willpower. And
he looks awesome.
Huge kudos to you. I know that's more like a private conversation, but we're not going to get that opportunity. So just big congrats. We're very, very proud of you.
Yep. It was fun seeing both of them because we haven't seen either of them really in quite a long time. I was joking with Tyler that I can see the Path of Exile 2 stress is on Jonathan because he's got the silver tips like I do.
Oh yeah, you silver foxes now. Yum yum.
So they come out and then they went straight into gameplay, which kind of was for me not. I wasn't hoping for that. I was actually hoping for gameplay to come like much later. Like a keynote address to me is like you speaking on your game, talking about stuff. It's not a game demo, and this felt like a game demo, which was surprising to me. And both Tyler and I kind of laughed at each other and we're like, I don't know what this means for the rest of this keynote when we've got these guys coming out here to play it. But it was cool to watch, and I loved that Mark died because I was like, see, even Mark can die.
That's right. And then you start seeing all the other gameplay demos that everyone else was doing. Granted, it's their virgin experience, but goodness, seeing how they were and how sluggish their gameplay was versus Mark's, which was a slowed down gameplay for the sake of the demo. All of a sudden it's like, wow, he crushed it. He was amazing. Yeah. And oh my goodness, Jonathan was just as a part of, like, sure, like they were going through, and we'll talk about all the cool stuff that we can remember that they actually said out loud and showed us, but just the like Jonathan's trying so hard not to swear on the keynote, right, while he's up there, but he's like getting so oh shit, freeze him. Yeah, and then he's getting, who was interviewing him after? Was it Crip?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden Jonathan's like, oh no, you don't want all that shit. Oh fuck that. He's awesome. Like, who cares? I loved it. I thought it was so awesome.
Yeah. So they do the demo. They get Octavian out there. They do the co-op ability, and they show the monk and the sorceress, which was cool. They also, I think, so prior to that, they had announced that PoE 2 was going to be its own game. So before they started the gameplay, that was one of the first things that Jonathan talked about. Just the scope of the game became too big. And I said to Tyler, like, I always wondered, like, it never made sense to me that they were going to be able to maintain this as 2 games.
To handcuff yourself with the old system and still try and maximize. Which is what
they always said they didn't want. Like, you know, there was this idea of like, we want to be free to do new stuff. And so it just always seemed odd to me. So I like the fact that it's going to be its own thing. Like, I want them to do whatever they can in the best way possible. And if that means make it a separate game, then that's not a big deal to me. I don't really see that as a bad thing. I think the thing that surprised me, and this might be jumping a little bit, I'm not sure, but was the idea that they're going to maintain both. I struggle with that one a little bit because who's going to care about Path of Exile 1? Well, that's one thing. Like, why would you play Path of Exile 1 when Path of Exile 2 is out there? Unless you're so just connected to the classes and ascendancies that are in Path of Exile 1.
You know where that really does start? Like, sure, there's diehard players, right? Like, I play all the Dark Souls games and Elden Ring, and there's people that go back to play Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 2 because they're that different. Yep. But to start with Path of Exile, start with Elden Ring, and like Chris, for example, one of our buddies, he plays Elden Ring. It's the first Souls game he's ever played. There's no way like he's going to go back and play Dark Souls 1. Now, I see people doing that when they spend money upfront for a game. They have this game in their backlog. They don't want to spend money on the next game, or it's still too much. They're going to wait till it's $20. So they play the old game. Like for me, when I used to play Madden with Ryan and Ian, we would play Madden even though the new one's out. We'd play, like, for example, I'd play Madden 20 when 21 is out because I'm waiting for it to be free on the EA subscription service that they have. And so I'm playing the old game for 6 months. But as soon as the new game's out, I don't care about the old game. Honestly, even if it's worse, I'm still playing the new game with updated rosters and this. I can't. Now, I'm one person out of 8 billion, but I don't see Path of Exile 1, even though we don't see YGGG, despite the fact they probably just want to keep it on because it's their baby. It's like it's the same thing as keeping Scrolls of Wisdom, right? You want to keep it for the reason that you're keeping it, whatever it is. But I don't see it staying alive as long as they hope it. You know what I mean? I don't see the numbers, people going back to play, even though they're trying to do staggered leagues to keep them both alive or to keep the player base interested. I don't see people being excited for Path of Exile 1 a year after Path of Exile 2's been announced, even if they have staggered leagues. I just think it's going to be too old, too dusty.
Yeah, like Jonathan in his conversation with Crip had this comment about not wanting to, give up or let Path of Exile 1 go. And my feeling was just like, why not? Like if you've created this new game, you're going to bring out the leagues, and then you want to do this staggered effect, which Chris kind of said, like, because we know people fall off, and then this gives them something to go and play. So I had a couple concerns with that. One, is it the exact same league going into Path of Exile 1, or are you actually going to try and develop 2 leagues per 3-month cycle, which is that you can't. I just don't think they can. And if they can, for how long can you maintain a level of quality where something hasn't been lost? And if it is just going to be the same league released on Path of Exile 1, my feeling was just like, why not just let Path of Exile 1 roll into standard? You'll do like, you can do like maybe bug fixes as things come up, but let the game just roll out in standard and stay as it is. The MTX, I love that they made the MTXs available on both. Like that is incredible. And I don't think people totally understand. Like, I hope people understand the level of commitment that is to the player base, because they don't have to. They could very easily have rolled out Path of Exile 2 as a brand new game, brand new set of MTX, brand new everything. And like, there's nothing that says that because you bought something for Path of Exile 1, you have to be able to use it on Path of Exile 2. I think that's awesome that they're doing that. But yeah, I just kind of was like, how long can you maintain keeping 2 games up to date, bug fixed, crashes fixed? Like, it just seems like a lot to do.
I think it does. And I think, like, I don't know, I come over with the mentality is like, when you come out with Path of Exile 2, call it Path of Exile, and the first Path of Exile just doesn't exist anymore. It's the biggest update ever, but standard's just done. You're starting fresh with standard, you're starting fresh with everything, except your account has all these MTX. And then, of course, you have some of those reward or god items, whatever those were, they find a way to bring those in. But I really don't see a problem starting fresh. This is a new update. Everything's fresh, but your account still has your MTX. Like, I like that it's Path of Exile 2. I like that it's a totally separate game, because there's a totally separate story and everything's. Oh yeah, like, but I'm just saying, like, ignore completely Path of Exile 1. Like from that point forward, it's not even available on the Steam store. If you want to, once Path of Exile 2 comes out, all you have is Path of Exile 2 available.
Why not let people continue to play? I don't see a reason, like a bad thing about letting people continue to play. It feels weird to me to be trying to still continue to develop for it after Path of Exile 2 comes out. But we'll see what happens. Like that was just my reaction to it.
Sure, yeah.
Like, you know, how are they going to maintain both? But so they announced that Path of Exile 2 is its own game. Mark does the gameplay. Lots of fun to watch. The bosses look incredible. Like,
and the permanent health bar, which stayed from the original ExileCon. I mean, it's been 4 years and they made a lot of different changes. And
way different.
You and I emphasized to each other ahead of time in previous episodes, but then also here. And of course, this does come a little bit in contrast with our disappointment to the unofficial release date that they mentioned. But to us, it doesn't matter what they said was going to happen with Path of Exile 2 back in 2019. Whatever changes you need to make, and sometimes you get disappointed because you get really hopeful and you're excited about certain changes that they mentioned and they change that and you're like, oh crap, I really wish. And then you might get on the complaining train. But at the end of the day, make whatever changes you need to make for the game to make it the best game that you can, like cutting Path of Exile 1 completely from the same resource. And unfortunately, in this situation, it kind of conflicts with our hopes for what this convention was going to be, because the release date ended up being non-existent. I mean, the closed beta is a year away. Of course, that's disheartening because of a whole bunch of expectations that we had ahead of time based on, you know, Chris saying come home early, and then, you know, just the last convention they had was big news, so we were expecting big news as opposed to just a big update. But when you throw that, like, expectations are expectations. So as soon as those die and you get used to the new news, it's exciting that they are making decisions for what's best for the game, as opposed to hoping to please everybody. You know what I mean? Like when Jonathan, and I know I'm skipping past the gameplay and I'm really excited to talk about that, but when Jonathan knew, as he was saying it, before he said it, when he was saying the date for closed beta, you could hear it in the crowd, but you could see it on his face before the reaction even started. He's like, I know it's going to be in July or June, whatever it is, 2024. And they know that's a displeasing thing. People are excited. They really wanted it to be a lot sooner, especially because of convention, but they're making the decisions that are best for the game and not rushing it. And at the end of the day, no matter what your expectation was for the convention and the news you were going to get, that is the best decision that any fan could have. You know, that's the best news any fan could have. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I do want to get back into the gameplay, but I think this is a good time. If you mentioned the date, so I'm just going to say my sort of piece about it, and then that way we can just let it be and move on to other things. They announced the date. Both of us were kind of dumbfounded a little bit when we saw that, and
that's true.
A little bit disheartened, and I had a much not a more negative approach in After Dark, but it was just I was a little bit more open about what I was feeling initially. And what I was saying to Tyler this morning is, for me, the struggle is separating a couple things. One, the convention of ExileCon 2 compared to ExileCon 1, and then probably most importantly was just the comment from Chris. So ExileCon 1 comes out, never had been a thing before. Everybody went to ExileCon 1 with the purpose of going to a Path of Exile convention. That was why people went, and that's why people watched. There was no plan for any, they hadn't like teased some big announcement or blah blah blah. It was just, hey, we're doing the first ever Path of Exile convention, and it was amazing. And then they announced Path of Exile 2. Place goes crazy, everybody gets so excited. It was amazing. And so then when they do another ExileCon, there is maybe a bit of an unfair expectation that means there's a big announcement, and that's certainly how I felt. And then I just feel like it was just made a little bit worse for them with that expectation side by Chris saying you want to head home early. And I don't know why that was. I'm not sure if that was just a miscommunication on his part, but they doubled down and tripled down on it, so it seemed a little bit weird. And so if you took that out, if I took out Chris not saying something, I think my expectations could have been tempered a little bit, because I would have gone like, you know, if they just played it off that this is a Path of Exile convention, we're excited to get a bunch of people together. play the game. We love the game. We want to update you on what's going on.
Even if they said something like, we have a big update for you, as opposed to I don't know, like update's totally different than like big news. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it just made it so much different by telling people that there was this reason to rush home. That it's always stuck poorly with me, like going back all the way back to when he first said it. I just never, I didn't agree with it. I didn't really understand it. But if I take that part out and remember that this is just a Path of Exile convention, the purpose of this convention was to get people together, because one of the things I struggled with yesterday, and it might have slightly skewed how I watched a lot of the rest of the convention, was me going, why are they having a convention? I don't understand. But that's also because I went into it with the expectation of what happened in ExileCon 1. And that's not really fair, because what happened in ExileCon 1 was never what I expected to happen in ExileCon 1.
Right.
So it's really tough trying to find this like balance of what my expectations were versus what their plan for it was. And
they did try and temper our expectations a couple weeks ahead of time. They were like, hey, just a reminder, 322 is coming out afterwards. Right. Yeah. Like this convention's the beginning of our marketing for Path of Exile 2. And so I guess it was just that one comment of, hey, you want to rush home after. And here's the crazy thing is, what are they rushing home for now? Now the keynote's done.
Yeah. It's pretty.
And there's still nothing to rush home for.
I'm convinced.
Like, you're still 3 weeks away from 322.
I'm convinced that's what it was, and I don't know that that's true, but I feel like 322 originally had an earlier release plan, and Chris was excited about it because 322 looks great. We're going to talk about that too. And so that is my I'm just giving that to him and just saying, like, I just don't understand why they doubled and tripled down and didn't like just say. I feel like it would have been fair to just say, hey, we did have a sooner expectation, because we already knew it was August 18th before ExileCon.
Yes.
Why not just, if that was it, just be like, yeah, we were really excited for people to play, but in order to make sure it's going to come out in its best state, we did have to push it back a couple weeks. So because it's hard to like figure out and temper your expectations, because it's not like they specifically built up the expectation that something was going to happen, but I feel like they kind of did just with Chris's comment, and that's it. Like that, if you took that whole part out.
Did he say it out loud? Because I only remember reading it on their posts.
No, he said it in one of their announcements for ExileCon. So I just, if I can take that part out and just take ExileCon 2 for what it is, which is a Path of Exile convention. It was a chance for them to celebrate their game, thank the people that are playing it, to do this big fun event, to come meet developers, to get a chance to come play Path of Exile 2. I have to just switch my head and go, that was the purpose of ExileCon 2, and that's why they're doing ExileCon 2. Because I mean, you heard me yesterday for way too long into the evening. I was going, what the fuck are they doing a convention for? Like, there was that doesn't make sense, but that's not fair, because I was doing that as a comparison to the first one, which the first one was never meant to be.
You can only have one first one. Yeah. So I think the fact that they're doing the convention is incredible. And once I started to get over the fact that that it was my expectation of something to come and not necessarily what they had planned on, I think it got a little bit better for me, because I went, okay, first off, PoE 2, we've talked about this before. You take as long as you want. It doesn't have to come out at any time. Obviously I want to play it, but I want it to be in a great state to play, and the game looks massive, and we're going to get back to the gameplay in a second. So take as long as you want, but it was a bit of a like slap in the face when you saw June 14th or whatever, 2024 for the closed beta, because then we were like, Jesus, then they got the open beta, then the full release. And while I do appreciate them saying closed beta date, I still would have rather seen an official launch. Like, closed beta is going to be here. Give us Christmas 2024.
Just something. Yeah. Don't give a date, but maybe go like our planned releases at this point, because it was there were just a few things where it was hard for me to get, when he said it's going to be 6 acts, we were going, oh, that's weird. They said 7 originally, but that's fine. And then they talk about all these new classes, and it's a totally separate game, and it's like, okay, this is cool, it's cool. And then you see the date, and it was like, it wasn't totally fair on my part to be upset about that, because they didn't say, and they actually explicitly tried to go back and say, not coming, temper your expectations. Right. Bex was all over Twitter. I feel like there was that one comment, and sadly that one comment
was that one thing that changed everything, wasn't it? The get home soon.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's the fun about being a nerd about a game, trying to guess, trying to figure it out, all this. And I guess the only blame you could throw GGG's way is how long this is taking. Because when you have something yes, COVID was a massive problem for every single person in the world, not just companies. So that obviously throws stuff into the mix. But when you're like a year away, and then you have a convention and it's a year away, and then you have like this, and you're saying like it's well over a year away still, like that's a long time for fans to speculate and guess and be hyped. And yeah, they're gonna come up with stuff, and like that's how hype works, and that's the pro and con of how releases work. And when people choose to put out their movie trailers, how far in advance? Some people do it 4 months in advance. Most movie trailers do it a month in advance. You know what I mean? Like you gotta, hype comes up, but then it goes down, and it's speculation always comes when you're excited for something. And so I guess maybe that would be the only part where, in terms of their timing for how all of this is coming together, it's a long time for fans to hope, right?
I was joking with Tyler yesterday that they accidentally did it a year early, like that they actually meant to do this event next year. And Chris just got excited and started booking stuff, and they were like, oh shit, we got to do it. Because this would have been such a cool event to be like the closed beta starting, next week
as you get
or whatever.
home.
That would have been such a cool, like, same as ExileCon, the first one, in an announcement. And again, that's just me talking about the maybe slightly unfair expectation I have because of what they did at the first ExileCon event, which was we didn't know that. So we went into it just going for a convention. And so it was really hard to get my head into the space of like, this is just a convention. That's the whole point of it. And I shouldn't be going into it expecting there's some huge announcement. And now I will say, if they do an ExileCon again, at least I'm not going in going like, what are you going to do?
Right.
Blow my mind
about the news. I'm going for the card game.
Yeah. So I am very excited for Path of Exile 2 to come out. And once I've given myself a chance to just rethink things and accept that it was a convention and that it's fun, it was really cool to see a lot of the stuff. So that was my feeling. That was Tyler and I had, we got a chance to get stuff out yesterday, and for me personally, it was a good chance for me overnight.
Don't listen to After Dark.
No, After Dark was me last night being a little bit more
candid.
Yeah, and more towards the end. But I don't think I was ever nasty. I just was frustrated. And I feel like what I said now, I just said in a worse way in After Dark. Like I just wasn't as, understanding to where I got it wrong with regards to my expectations.
You were drunk.
I wasn't that drunk, but I was drinking in After Dark. I couldn't get too drunk because I was going to have to edit all night. But anyway, so 2024, we're going to see the closed beta. It's going to be great. I'm excited for it.
And considering what we saw, it looks amazing.
Yeah, the gameplay is just so fun. Like I love all that. Like I love that they've gone the route of saying everything can freeze, everything can stun. You just have to build
right.
it up. Like,
and I love that they
fun.
even have the guts to reference kind of the idea where they get it from, just for quick reference points. They reference Elden Ring, like there's those bars that build up on yourself or on a boss. And so
would you rather see it? Because you don't see it in Path of Exile
I would
2.
100% want to see it.
Yeah,
yes.
You don't. At least they don't show it right now. And I was thinking that too, that it would have been really cool to be able to see those bars build up. So you have, because otherwise it's Path of Exile 1 in the sense that it's like guess. Like you don't know the information. So I have no idea how hard did my hit apply towards that freeze.
It would be nice, but at the same time, I don't think it's important because it's not negligible damage. Like in the current game, Path of Exile 1, you can't see it and you have no idea if it's effective or not because it's all based on percentages. And so many of those ailments rely on individual hits. And so you get somebody with puny little daggers that are going for attack speed over damage, and you're realizing you're not doing anything, but you don't realize that there's nothing in PoE 1 that tells you. Whereas in this game, it would be nice to see how you're building it up or how quickly it works, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. And they could do other things too. Like you don't have to have a cheesy health bar that's a freeze bar or a poison bar or a scarlet rot bar like they do in Elden Ring, because you could just do visuals. Like if it's on a boss, you could just see the ice build up or the poison. Like they could do something on the actual character to make it look more. But who knows? Because visual clarity is probably going to be an issue again, because and it was great hearing Jonathan say this, because I think it was Crypt that was interviewing Jonathan, where it's like, so what's the visual clarity going to be like? I guess it wasn't that specific, but that's what I was thinking, because he was talking like, how fast is the gameplay going to be? Is it going to be just as nuts? Are we going to be able to do crazy things? And so that was neat. Like, you're still going to be able to zoom, but you're going to need to take more time with enemies.
Yeah, in general, it'll be slower than PoE 1. They don't want people to get like to that crazy level. Yeah. But it was funny hearing a number of people like that we did watch. A lot of people were saying that it felt slow, and Tyler and I were both like, I liked it. Like, I would obviously not want to be that speed through the whole thing, but I liked that it felt like there was purpose to what you were doing.
Yes,
and that you could I do like to go faster. But I also don't mind the fact that there was, like, I was watching the XP bar and there was a purpose to killing every single mob. Like, I was watching his bar move as he killed just 2 guards, not bosses. But it seemed like there was a good purpose to what you were doing, and the speed seemed fine. It was a little bit on the slow side, but it was also Act 3. Like, nobody's getting into the halfway mark of Path of Exile's campaign and just like flying through there, unless it's a 3rd or 4th character that you've built up some leveling gear on or something. So the only reason that I would have liked to see those bars or some sort of information is because they fall off. And so knowing that you've maybe taken too long to start doing damage again of that type,
to know what your threshold is.
Yeah, like having some understanding of when it's starting to fall off. But I just love that it's on everything now. All bosses, all enemies, everything can be, CC'd to some degree. Good Lord, the like heavy knockdown was 8 seconds, they were saying.
Crazy, right? Stun. How the stuns were working. And I mean, they were emphasizing a million times over the dodge roll that almost broke Blizzard in half when they were arguing about whether to put a dodge roll into D3 or not, because it wasn't on PC. So the fact that this is on both platforms. I mean, they didn't talk about console at all, but assuming that it's because it's on PC, it'll be on console. But just that prospect, and then they have, there were a lot of questions about it, and so they start talking about, movement speed's going to impact your roll, right? So if you have an investment into movement speed, it's going to impact the speed of your roll. It's a faster roll at the beginning, but slower at the end. Jonathan pointed out in the character skills panel that people are like rolling between the legs of the boss. I remember Rory saying, like, I forget what, like if there was a troll or an elephant behind somebody, like a whole bunch of enemies, the big enemy can just blow over all the small enemies. They're not stuck behind that. And they said, but like all that kind of stuff happens to both. You know what I mean? Like, it happens to the character, but it happens to enemies. Like, you can be stunned or frozen, but it's a more gentle approach to the character. It's not as harsh as it would be to the enemy. So it's just really neat how it's so interactive, but the mechanics aren't different. Like in the past, experienced PoE players are used to so many hidden mechanics and so many different exceptions. Well, yeah, but because it's this kind of enemy, you couldn't do that. So it's just not this, but that's not written anywhere in the game. New players wouldn't have any idea how, well, it actually works different for us, but it works for this. Or you have like armor you have to stack that. It's not just a mitigated damage like it would be for elemental resistance. So I love that the rules for enemies are the same that they are for characters now. And I think that's really, really cool going forward. A lot more. The game's still crazy complicated, but it simplifies what you need to remember and what's important to theorycraft.
The dodge roll being no cooldown and instant is crazy to me. Like I feel for the keyboards out there, because that space bar is going to get beat. I was told though that specifically Tyler's going to love the dodge roll on gamepad on like a controller. So apparently it's very smooth on controller, which is exciting. So the dodge roll does seem like a very analog friendly thing, because I'm not pointing. Yeah, you don't have to move the mouse. I'm aiming with where I'm going, and so that does seem to be. If you were to get into those petty arguments of which one benefits more from one, that kind of dodge roll stuff's always fantastic on an analog especially stick. If you're a little bit slower on the mouse side. Like for a person who is comfortable with keyboard and mouse, it's probably going to feel just as good. But if you are a little bit slower on the mouse movement side, an analog controller is infinitely easier, obviously, to quickly aim top left and roll versus moving the mouse. So yeah, the dodge roll is really cool. I thought the gameplay was awesome. The bosses look so fun. There's 100 bosses. Somebody made a great comment on our Discord where they were saying that these are
all the optional bosses are required.
And their comment was so So all optional bosses are required because these bosses have the potential to give
Right.
you permanent stats, which that's not an optional boss.
No, like
No
the one
is
boss that they
optional.
specifically stated that on is you get
10
an extra
spirit.
10 spirit. And then we look at each other and we're like, spirit? And then they start getting into how reservation works and mana works, and minions are going to cost spirit instead of mana. And like they were using zombies. This was in a different panel, but I think it was Jonathan saying, if you, or Rory, the amount of spirit you have is your limitation for how many zombies. The skill's not going to have a limit to how many zombies. I mean, starting off, who knows what changes they'll make for balances in the future, but the amount of zombies you have is just limited by how much spirit they reserve in general, not by a skill limitation that they have. And so if you want, I mean, they didn't give any numbers, but if you want 10 zombies and no auras, great. But if you want some auras, maybe you can only have 5 zombies. And just the whole prospect of spirit versus mana was a really cool thing to hear them talk about and discover.
It was cool for them to do it because it is true. Like at the point where Path of Exile 1 is now, you just play the game without mana. You play the game with reserving as much as possible and then finding ways to make your costs so low that it doesn't matter how low you get it. So it's cool for them to come up with a totally new system. I will say the other thing that besides both of us going spirit was literally the very first thing you see was gold, and we're both like,
Right. What's gold? You said this would never be a thing. You would never have currency like this. It would always be stuff. But then,
and then they didn't say anything.
I know. I actually think that was a big mistake because you're so hyped for everything you're seeing. But there's this one nagging question that's
They
constant.
never addressed it till Crip asked.
Hour and a half.
Yeah.
They didn't. And then the thing ends, the keynote ends, and I'm like, and it sucks because you want to be so excited about this, and you are so excited, but at the end you have 2 questions, and they're not exciting questions. You're like, what the heck is gold? You said you were never going to do that. And a long time ago, of course, you were never going to do gold. And what are people going home early for?
Yeah.
And so, of course, the second one, we're probably not going to have an answer for. But then eventually, John didn't even think of talking about it because it's so trivial.
Asked.
And
asked by Crip.
Right. And eventually, gold is just to help you level up.
Kind of like what they did in Ruthless Gold, which worked out fine. It's your option to buy some stuff from the vendor. I don't think it's a bad thing. It was just very odd that they didn't, the second it dropped. Maybe they've just been playing, like working on the game so much that now it's become just second nature to them that yeah, there's gold, but somebody should have been like, oh guys,
that's not in PoE 1 and it's not even a normal Ruthless. But if you, I really hope it doesn't clutter. I mean, thank goodness it auto picks up. Mm-hmm. Hopefully it's a huge range because I don't want to have to even care about it.
Yeah.
But with gold, I just really hope it's not a stupid clutter. Like if gold keeps on showing up,
it was in the inventory. And right. I don't like that.
And if it starts showing up end game, it's just extra garbage on the screen that you got to filter through. Like I just hope it. I don't know. I really hope it's done well because I just don't want more stuff on the screen. And like I remember you laughing. What was it like? How many more base types or like what did they call
700. Was it base types?
No, it wasn't base types. It was like item. Oh, there was
types or something. It was a lot.
It was an interesting wording, and you laughed at me because I want the game to be more complex, but I don't want there to be 7,000 things that the filter needs to hide. Not for preference, but for like just required sustenance for being able to play the game. So yeah, hopefully it's all balanced well. They didn't talk very much about item or base types at all. They did talk a lot about implicits though, and that was in regards to the skills. And that is such a neat idea. Like who knows what the other implicits are going to be, but it seems like implicits are all about the skill now. And that'll be a way for you to save mana or modify your skill. Right. Yeah. They had a different level fireballs and then they had
your next skill.
Unleash.
Yeah. Which was really cool. And especially like when we were watching, I said to you, like, they're going to do that for every class. That means like that's crazy. And we only saw 2. We don't even know how many there are. And if that's what they're referring to the 700, I don't really know, but that seems crazy.
Hopefully that does reduce the amount of base types they have though.
Well, the base type won't matter quite as much because now you're just looking for the implicit that you want.
Right.
So if you can filter for that too, that would be pretty sweet.
It would be like right now they have so many different base types because they have so many different implicits, right? So they'll have this many daggers or this many staves because they want different implicits on these items. But now if you have what seems like a randomly rolled implicit on an item, you have that one base type that could roll different implicits as opposed to filtering so many different items away from your visual aid so that you can find a specific implicit. So anyway, it does look really exciting. It's really cool that it's interactive with a specific skill. And dude, don't even get me started on weapon swapping.
It looked awesome.
That is the coolest idea ever. For like, I remember way back when on a Bay class, they were giving PoE a hard time for not having stat sticks. You know what I mean? Like just slap a staff on your back and all those attributes you stacked onto that staff count towards your character. And that wasn't the direction GGG wanted to go. And this is almost like solving all of that in such a really cool, creative way. You can select, this is so crazy. You can select which skills
uses which one,
uses which staff, and it automatically switches. If I'm using a fireball and this isn't a thing, but an ice ball, and I want one staff to be used when I'm using the fireball and then a different staff to be used when I'm using the ice ball, I just have to hit the skill and it auto swaps. And the cool thing is it's not instant. There is a delay. And I think that's so smart so that it can't be cheesed. Obviously, that's a balance change. They can change 100,000 times over. But you know that's going to be something that's extremely important for them to continually make sure is right, especially based on the skill that you're using. But how cool is that? You can go from melee to spell. You can go from minion to not. You can choose which auras and which minions are up based on which weapon set you're using. And all you have to do is hit a skill.
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's so neat. And of course, you can modify your skills to be used with both. And oh, man.
Well, and then to combine that with the tree, the fact that the tree has multiple, some things, can you do multiple ones for that weapon swap? That's just crazy.
It's so great. Like you have, so they said you get, like you don't have an infinite amount, so you don't have like 300 skill points on the tree, but they said that these extra points come from your skill books. So the skill books you get during the campaign. So let's, what are there now? 24 skill points you get from skill books in the current campaign, I think it is. So let's pretend that that number is still going to be the same. How cool is that though? That you get 24 skill points that you can essentially split up to do different things based on weapon swapping. Like how neat that just, that enhances theory crafting so much, but it also makes the stress of theory crafting a little bit less, because it's like, how many times have we been in a build where, oh, I'd love to do that, but I just can't squeeze it in because you're making one build. But now you're making with the eventual 9 6 links or 5 links, whatever, a 6 socket with weapons where weapon swapping is easily a part of every single build, even for me, who I want to do like a 1-button build.
Yeah, you don't have to actually hit the button to swap it.
All I do is just hit that other skill and it automatically happens. But then I don't have the risk of, like, for example, with Righteous Fire right now, I have both fire damage and dot damage because I love the leech of the poor chieftain got, in my opinion, just got massacred for what I like to use it for. But for the current version of the chieftain, wait, that's what it's going to be, or that's what chieftain's going to be like in 322? Oh, crap. Well, anyway, up until 322, my chieftain does lots of leech, and that's part of what helps with incinerate. And that's what helps its life regen when I'm running RF or in a huge battle. But it would be really cool to be able to swap that out. Sometimes I'm just in the mood for RF. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm in the mood to be more interactive. And so now I can have a staff or some scepters that are just for dot damage, and then I could, every time I hit the incinerate button, it automatically switches to something that maybe is more beneficial. So just so cool, because it allows that, it's like it removes the stress of theory crafting for like, oh, I'd love to squeeze it in that build, but I feel I could be wasting this cluster if I wanted to add this to this build. It would only be beneficial circumstantially. And now they made things more circumstantial, but without the penalty. And it's so cool. What an amazing, whoever thought of that, you get a medal.
I love the menu for it too. It just looked cool. Like where you were, it was actually breaking down all of your current active skills and then just check mark boxes for which weapon swap do you want to use for which one, or do you want to just not care? Because then it will just use whatever you currently have. It just looked really good. It looked like really well thought out, and it was not something I would have ever thought of. Like it was such a creative idea. So yeah, that was really cool.
It was. And from watching the gameplay of Mark, Neon, and Octavian when they were playing together, I have to say I was quite disappointed with the gameplay of, and no fault to the, as far as I know, no fault to the streamers that had the opportunity to play. But when you had Ziz, Mathil, and Preach doing gameplay previews, they did the same.
It was all
same classes, same skills that
I feel like either less available. I feel like not all of them are available.
Maybe, but that's such a poor thing to give us. Like, we're not seeing anything different.
I want to see a druid. Like, I hope we get to see a druid today.
Wouldn't that be awesome? Oh my goodness, that would be awesome. And it would, like, it was just so. But so we're not learning much from the other gameplay previews. Hopefully, the other gameplay previews that happened today, the last day of the convention that's coming up. Hopefully, yeah. What time is it? Oh, we're good for time still. We're waiting for our 12:30 our time to see some of the stuff
from yesterday.
It was really cool to still see some of that stuff. But I remember specifically when Mathil was playing. He was doing melee, and well, he's such a great job by all of them to play. It's always nerve-wracking. You don't want to suck, player, but you are. But yes, he is. But it was funny, like he's running away, he's leap slamming away from everything. Like it's really difficult. Mathil was saying like there's like 100 bosses. I feel like every enemy is a boss. I feel like I'm farming bosses, and it's cool. Like it looks really difficult. It's terrifying the whole way. You really have to know your character and your skills, and you're really desperate for weapon upgrades, which is great. But one thing that I thought was really interesting, there was quite a few times where he was completely empty. He was fighting a rare that just was really, really tough, and his flasks were empty, and he really wanted to use like, we're strategically running away. We're looking for health. I need to fill up my flasks. And so many times we thought he was dead. He thought he was dead, but he kept staying alive because of how the skill animations move, whether it was a leap
there
slam.
Had been like a life on hit or something, because he was definitely,
it could have been leech for sure too. But when he would jump up to do a spell or a massive slam, like there was some escapability within the animation that helped him stay alive too. So it wasn't just running away that helped him. He was at certain points, like he's just like run, jump, and but he's like intentionally attacking, and those animations to the damage helped keep him alive. So there's some really neat aspects that are going to be coming that completely change how we all play. And you're going to be, it's like almost playing Elden Ring. It's like, I really like this weapon, but do I like the move set? And now it's like, I really like this skill, but do I like the moveset? Do I like what my character does to implement this skill?
So I, to be honest, didn't fully watch Ziz, or I didn't watch Preach at all. I watched a little bit of Ziz, but what was cool with Mathil's is that he actually got to a boss. And what was cool about the boss is that it was like a Dark Souls mechanical boss. Like he never ended up killing it. His time ended, but it was this idea of like, you have to somehow get this boss to stay still and then fire a harpoon.
Right.
Like it was just cool that there was like, it felt very Dark Soulsy to me in the way that this boss had mechanics that you couldn't just like burst your damage and kill it. You had to actually play the mechanic of the boss. I thought that was awesome.
Really cool. I like that. Like, as long as it doesn't take away from actually being able to use your character in your build. You know what I mean? Like that's Elden Ring really had a lot of screw ups this time around. There's a lot of bosses where all you're doing is running. You're not actually fighting. And like in an arena like that, once you figure out how to get that boss, still back to Path of Exile and the boss that Mathil was playing, it gives you that time to play. So hopefully it does seem really neat. Really neat. And I love the audio cues. Like there wasn't a too stupid tutorial thing that popped up. There was nothing to read. It was just like, I need to find a way to make him still. And I like that. It doesn't interrupt my gameplay. It lets me know exactly what I need to do, or at least to figure out.
My hope is that like in that style of game where you're playing, the ability to hit them with the harpoon is what makes them vulnerable, or allows you to now do your damage and work them down. And then you got to keep working the arena that way. Like that's fun. And it also is a bit more engaging than right now in Path of Exile. You just run in, spam your abilities. In most cases, don't pick up loot and then move on. So it just looked fun, and it just looks so good. Like people who were talking about, oh, Path of Exile 2 doesn't look that much better than PoE 1. You are on crack. Like,
no, they've probably never played before.
No, but they're talking about they were talking about trailers, and I was like, put the two side by side. It's so smooth. I mean, not mobile, but
Jesus. Who didn't test that connection before it went live? poor mobile people. Hey, like it looked fine for them, and it just
it was awful. You could not watch it on the stream. It was just
made me nauseous.
Yeah, it was like just choppy. We'll talk maybe about mobile in a minute, but anyway,
no, that was good.
The only thing I was going to say about mobile that I think, first off, that's not the same mobile game I played. Why did they switch it? I don't understand. Like, they want to make it tie into PoE 2, so instead of taking a game that, first off, nobody's playing it, it's a mobile game. They should have just kept the development in the original version that they had and just threw that out there. I mean, like, because otherwise you're just constantly trying to update and develop and make it better. And now you've got a release date that's going to be similar to PoE 2. It's like, oh, it's like, no.
PoE 2 is going to be first, he said.
It really? Jesus. Well, anyway, yeah, I don't know how it played there. I think Subtractum said that it felt smooth when he was playing it, but poof, it did not look great to watch. But anyway.
On a side note, my last thing for PoE Mobile, GGG, if you're still taking suggestions on it, do the smart flask system, where if I have 5 health flasks, I only have to hit 1 health flask. I hope that's in there, because having 5 different flasks on the screen that you have to hit.
I think it was actually pretty intuitive. I don't remember how you did it, but I think it was a single button in the one that I played. Now, granted, when I came out, because I didn't watch from the start of the mobile one, but when I came out, I was like, what the hell is this? They've made Path of Exile 2 into a mobile. Like, this is not the same game. And then you started watching, like, oh boy, yeah. This is not looking great.
Go back to skills
anyway,
or whatever.
Yeah, so the bosses looked awesome. Skills looked like a lot of fun. That the linking system looks great. The way that the stuff they were doing with the skills.
Oh, not crazy. Linked skills, but linked sockets.
Yeah, the linking.
No, I love. Okay, this is totally so off topic, but obviously
was
still
that
relevant.
322.
Yes, Chris's
with 322 or PoE 2.
It was.
I think it was 322.
It's for PoE 1. Right. Oh my goodness, the amount of fun Chris had.
Oh man,
introducing like the MTX and the different ideas. Like
stupid.
Oh my goodness, his smile, and he would have just his little quick comments. Chris, you were absolutely perfect. So fun, it was hilarious. He's like, because we can.
He just talks about how ridiculous they were getting.
And like, oh man, so good. Like how the items are like circling around you after you pick them up. And then of course, because they're really pushing their link skills, they have that one link skill that chills and freezes. And
it looked like fun, but good Lord, good luck trying to coordinate that one.
Oh, hilarious. So anyway, so much fun. GGG, you raid Justin, despite the confusion and some of the disappointment, you really made us laugh a lot. So and it'll be fun to watch it again now that there's no expectation. Like, watch that keynote again.
I'm more excited for today.
And definitely, I can't wait for
I want to see the re-recording with Rishi that happened yesterday. I cannot wait for Camille and Kane to do their part. Like, today's got some really good ones for me. I actually am more excited now than I was yesterday for the ARPG roundtable. Like, so it means we just have to record the second part a little bit later, because I actually think that's going to be quite good. So granted, when you're hearing this, just keep in mind at this point in the episode, we have yet to hear what happens during the second day. So stay tuned.
One thing that was probably the biggest emphasis of the showcase that Jonathan and Mark did was skill combos, how they feed off of each other. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, there was a huge emphasis for you want to chill them or slow them down and then use your glacial cascade, or you want to use this lightning skill after you've used this lightning skill, or while you're standing in this fog thing. And then of course, trigger skills, right? They were showing the meta gems for trigger skills, and now trigger skills reserve spirit instead of mana. And so it's really cool to see how because they want the game to maintain its complexity and probably be 10 times more complicated, but still approachable. And what a great way to do that, by simply just being experienced with skills. This kind of skill does this and provides this kind of debuff, or does this to enemies. And just in your own head, as you're reading through other cold or lightning or fire skills, whatever it's going to be, you're like, oh, wow, that would be, this one's really good against frozen enemies. Look at all that extra damage. Is there a skill that I can use that's easy for me to use that really applies that quickly? And I love how they did show a skill with a cooldown. That was the one that had the unleash implicit. But it was, despite the fact that they showed that, it was so, I don't like cooldowns, and I agree with Jonathan when he said that. I believe it was Jonathan, but I love that the game itself isn't restricting you. You know what I mean? Like,
you've chosen
it's
to
the
do it.
skill itself. So it's just a slow skill. It's a slow cast time. It's, well, your roll is slow because you don't have investment in movement speed. So it's just, you don't have to look somewhere to see if your skill is ready. All you're doing is watching your character. And just by what your character is doing, you know if that skill is available or not.
Let me just note that a helicopter just like attacked the top of my home.
That was so loud. It felt like the helicopter was actually flying at street level all the way across.
All right. Hopefully remove that.
All right. But it's just like, it's so, that really helps with visual clarity.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, there's so many times where with other skills in Path of Exile, you're waiting for the war cry cooldown. You're waiting for this. And on a side note, war cries can do damage now. What?
That's in 322.
Yeah. So, but it's such a great way for visual clarity, because if you can maintain an eye on your character, hopefully with what they said, I'm throwing a random number out there, 90% of the skills available to you are, you're not looking at your skills. You just know what the skills are, and you know based on what your enemies are doing when you want to.
I feel like they know we're recording.
Right, the helicopter's like,
keep doing
forever exile, guys. But no, like, that's just a really cool part that I'm very excited for. Like, it's a lot less staring at the top corner of the HUD to see what my ailments are. It's a lot less staring at my HUD to see where my skills are, where my cooldown are, my flask. Like, it's just, the less I need to look into the different corners that they have, the better the gameplay experience is. So the more that you can show me just by what my character is doing, the better it is. And I think they've done a fantastic job with that. And on a side note, it was really interesting to see how similar and different the HUD is.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny when they pulled up the character screen with the items in it. If you actually go back and watch the history of PoE, the coloring and style of it is actually like back into their like alpha days. Like the coloring that they've picked to go with it, it looks great. It's so weird not seeing links and sockets on your items, like it's all in a separate menu now, and it's very different. Somebody did make a great point, I don't remember who it was, but made a good point of saying, like, when you watched Mark and Octavian, like there's even like a maybe it was Mathel, there's even a higher level of like appreciation for how well they were playing it, because they didn't have multiple socketed items that they were using. Their trees weren't even spec'd into. Like, it looks really cool. That thing is going to take me a bit to wrap my head around. Like, even when they did it, when Mark was playing, there was a, like, I feel like in the same sense that they missed out on talking about gold, they really like jumped into that wicked fast. Whereas if you were new to Path of Exile, you'd have been like, what the fuck? What is this? They didn't even talk about this screen where all my active skills are here, and this is where I'm putting my supports. Like, even me, for a person who understands the game, I was like, hold on. Like,
yeah,
just
stay there for a minute. Come on, let's talk about it. It's okay to talk about it again. That's the part we're most excited for.
Yeah. So I felt like I missed a little bit about that. I may have to rewatch some of it, but also with a lot of the stuff, because I wanted to go talking about 322 in a minute, but a lot of the Path of Exile 2 stuff that we're talking about, I just hope that in another year of development, we just don't see as big of a shift from, like, I want it to be whatever they want it to be, but this, compared to what we saw during ExileCon, not even the same. No. It's, besides the socketing system, it is crazy different, and I love it. It's gone in such a good direction, but I don't want to be talking about stuff now and in a year go, oh, they've changed that again.
We might have COVID to thank positively for that, though, right? If like things have to slow down and people are working from home, it gives you an opportunity to rehash or be honest with stuff, or be like, you know what, we really should have just done this instead. Let's start from scratch on this. And, maybe that did provide them some opportunity to do so. Now we are like, we're talking closed beta in a year. That really isn't a lot of time.
Nope.
Right? Like,
especially
when you're
they're only got 4 acts, he said. They still have 2 more acts.
Right. Yeah. When they're saying they still haven't finished the campaign of the acts, but now you want your end game to be nailed, and you're solidifying all these things. But there's some things, like when you had Octavian interviewing the 3 in the skills discussion, there was a question about Val skills, but they haven't even touched Val skills yet. So just the process in which they're going, you don't really have time. Like, just from my naive perspective on how they go about, okay, now we're dealing with this, now we're dealing with this, now we're dealing with this, when there's clear mechanics that they haven't even touched yet, like Val skills. You can't get rid of Val skills. So when you haven't even gone through and made choices about that yet, they don't have the time to make these kind of changes anymore. Like they're a year out of closed beta. Closed beta is everything's done. Where if you have like a glaring issue, let us know. Otherwise, try and crash the game for us and have a good time doing it. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, if they decide to do an open beta, it's the exact same thing with just the massive stress of 100,000 people playing instead of 2,000. So yeah, they're a year away. Like it's now, from my naive opinion, their choices are almost written in stone or in pen. It's not in pencil anymore. And it's just, this is what has to happen next. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. It's too bad that it's still 11 months away before we see that, but I'm still excited. Like it looks great. I just have to accept that we're going to have a number of PoE 1 leagues still to go. 322 looks fun.
I'm not a big MOBA guy. But I am still curious to see how the league goes.
I love all the new stuff. Like 14 new support gems is crazy.
It is.
And yeah, a number of them actually look like pretty substantial with regards to their changes to how they interact with skills.
Oh, that actually does bring up another PoE 2 thing. They were talking about support gems in PoE 2. They don't want them to boost the skill. They want them to change the skill. Like there's specific wording when you actually watch the presentation when Rory was speaking, but that was really cool. They emphasized that support gems are going to modify the skill. It's just not going to be damage upon damage upon damage. And they said in the rare case that a support gem will give bonus damage, it's going to come with a massive consequence. They attempted something similar to that previously when they changed melee physical support. You know, they added the reduction to attack speed. When they, changed minion damage support, they added the 25% less life. So they've done something like that, but they weren't revamping, like they weren't getting rid of certain skills, whereas PoE 2 gives them the opportunity to just get rid of anything they want, come back with anything they want. And so I am really excited about that because that really changes the investment onto the tree and puts an emphasis on your items as well.
Well, one thing that I liked, but I was curious if you would like it, but you didn't actually say anything when we were watching it, was I think it's cool, but the fact that now support gems will affect the stat requirement. So if you are using
as opposed to the mana cost,
right? It may still affect the mana cost. We don't really know, but the fact that a 111 intelligence skill could all of a sudden be going even higher. The reason I like that is because I like them trying to control the power creep, and that if you feel like this is the direction you want to go with that skill, you have to commit to it, and you can't just it's not what's the word, the kitchen sink, like you can't get everything. You have to actually start to figure out what it is that you want. So I thought that was a cool way of doing it, where it's not just a matter of can you find a way to maintain the mana? It's now, do you even have the stats? If you're pushing the skill damage, or maybe it's not damage because they said that they want to affect. I mean, how do you have 5 supports that change the way a skill acts though? That doesn't really, I don't really understand how that's supposed to work, but I thought that was cool that if you want to stack a bunch of blue gems onto it, you're going to increase. What I am curious about though is does that mean that if I take a blue gem, but I put some green or red supports, is there all of a sudden a dex and a strength requirement on it? That's kind of cool.
It is. And that's what they were kind of emphasizing. Like so they were talking about, it's a lot more deterministic crafting. They haven't talked about the crafting bench yet, but this game is very deterministic all of a sudden. Like you don't have a jeweler's orb that could give you up to 5 extra links. It's like the Eldritch currency in a way. Like there's a lesser, medium, greater versions of them, but it's guaranteed. So yeah, you have your jeweler's orb that's going to guarantee you 3 sockets. Boop, there you go. It's like one click, and you know that jeweler's orb always does that. But same with chromatics. Like they didn't specifically say that there's different kind of chromatics, but they did say that color coding your gems is deterministic. Yep. So if you are trying to off color your gem, it's not a big deal. I mean, assuming that this is what it's, in general, what it's called, you have a blue chromatic, and it's like, okay, there you go. Now I have a blue support on my green active skill. And so, but then when you put something in, now that support costs,
which is cool because that doesn't happen right now.
Right. And I do think that's cool. The one concern I have with it now isn't relevant because that's balance based, right? They can easily at any patch at any time be like, oh, well, fork support used to cost 44 dex, now it costs 33, whatever it is. Just as long as there's not easy, but like the investment is well balanced. You know what I mean? Like the ability to get that for, you know, like if you're using, let's say, a dex skill that costs 150 and you want, you know, 5 green supports with it, is getting
it still has to be realistic,
right? Yeah, I don't want it to be the primary part of character
my
building.
whole tree is just like stats,
right? Especially if they decide to keep tattoos, right? Which seems really cool.
Oh my God, Chris couldn't even speak trying to get the tattoo part out.
I know, wasn't that great?
Awesome.
He's like, you can tell that I'm really just so excited about trying to get to just tell you what tattoos are. But oh man, they're so great. Like watching every one of those employees up there, they really do care. They're so excited. And I mean, this is like 322 is what, expansion number 50? I don't know what it would be. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot, and they're still so excited about it. It's not just like, man, like having this one game for this long is really a lot.
I love it.
And I love it. And then, you know, he's making fun of himself that he dies all the time, right? There was that unique league item that cast a portal on death. He's like, awesome. That's for me to save me time and
2 slots. No cats on death
but
portal.
So like it's great. And then of course they're bringing in, I don't care about this mechanic. I'm not a fan of mechanics that go core that have nothing to do with the ARPG experience. It's like trying to add a different game.
What?
Well, Blight would be one of my long-standing ones where the tower defense version...
There is still an ARPG aspect to it, though. There are slashing and killing enemies.
Yeah, and I mean, and you know...
Maybe not if you take the new Keystone, where you're like, yeah, I do nothing, towers do 300%. That's awesome.
Sure it is, but like, you know, to me, those are things like they're fine for a time, but they're not the game.
But at least you're not forced into it.
Well...
You're not. You could choose not
oils to are important, right?
You can get oils and other things, but yes.
Some, but definitely not the same. And then same with the types of oils, I forget what they're called, that let you like dismantle amulets. And then Blight, especially with how the tree is currently built, that is where you want to get that. And so now we have, what's it called? The stealth game? Sanctum with the floors.
Awesome.
It's going core.
Yeah. And hopefully better if they are actually using your own mitigation to affect the resolve. That's awesome.
Yes. Hopefully it's not just damage types, right? Because you have armor and evasion and energy shield, and they did say what those 3 do, but there's also
the dodge one or evasion was like 6% chance to not lose resolve. I was like, no.
But we don't know what their evasion
I don't know what it'll look like in the end.
But here's the thing, like there are certain skills that specifically just give damage reduction, right? Like you have physical damage reduction. Do endurance charges help mitigate?
Well, endurance gives you armor,
right? Endurance charges give you physical damage mitigation. It's not armor. It's flat. Yeah. It's flat damage mitigation like resists are. Yeah. And so, you know, you get something like Arctic armor. Okay, well, that reduces physical damage and fire damage taken. It's not a damage. It's not a defense. It's not a defense mechanic, though. Or sorry, it is. So I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It's not armor. It's not a defense. It's not armor, evasion, or energy shield. So does that apply to what's the currency? What's your health bar?
Resolve.
So if those are things that I like to use and depend on in the game because they're a lot less circumstantial to the type of enemy that you're fighting. I of course still try and have defense types, but I'd have less criticism to not Crucible. What's it called? Sanctum going core. If like the whole idea of now these defensive mechanics apply to your resolve, awesome. Like that makes it a lot more the ARPG game, just like a side game. It is still,
whether you like it or not, though, a part not stealth, but a don't get hit. Like no matter what they do with regards to the mitigation, there still has to be this idea of you could fail the roguelike because that's the idea of a roguelike. So, but the one nice thing is when they do something like Sanctum and it coming core, it's again not something you have to do. Like you could choose to do it. Some people will love to do it, but you don't have. You could literally never look at Sanctum. Just like there's some leagues we just don't ever look at. But it was a very, very well received league. And it's cool for it to be coming out for those people that really want to play it, because it does give a bit of a switch up to just spamming maps.
Yeah, no, it's very true. Just as long as the rewards of the mechanic aren't core, or sorry, aren't outside of, I keep wanting to call it Crucible. What's it called? Sanctum. Like, for example, the relics. If those relics are...
Well, the relics only affect you in there now. They're not bringing back sanctified relics. Sanctified relics affected you outside of the Sanctum.
Okay.
They're not bringing those back. The only thing that is only in Sanctum is there are some uniques. There's some uniques that you can only get from the boss at the end, and that to me is fine.
To me, that's fine as well. Whatever mechanic it is, there's a different focus, and because uniques aren't required, they're not just passive boosts. They're very build specific. None of them are required. Yep. I think that's a great way to go about it. So
I think if you bring something core like Sanctum, you have to remove the sanctified flask, because you can't make someone feel like they have to do it, or they're going to play worse than someone who chose to do it. And I think that's a good I know everybody loves sanctified flasks. I loved sanctified flasks, but you were completely forced to go and play in there. Now, I know that they're making the normal relics tradable, which is fine if somebody wants to use them. But I'm so much happier that sanctified relics won't be in, so I won't feel like I have to go and focus on Sanctum. If I'm playing Sanctum, it's because I want to play Sanctum.
What were the rewards for the current MOBA league? What's it called? Trials of the
Ancestors? To that effect. 322. What were the what?
What were the rewards?
Well, the rewards were actually pretty cool, because you get to see it ahead of time, and if you can defeat that, so you're in a fight against three different, up to I think it carries on 3 times. And you pick who you want to attack, and it shows you what your reward's going to be. Like in one of the examples, there was a Mega Nord's unique belt was one of the rewards. If you happen to beat that team, your reward was the Mega Nords. And if you progress on, then you get to the next one, and then you'll get a new set of things that you can win. So I like that, because you're picking, what you're trying to get, and then the difficulty is probably scaled based on whatever that potential reward is. The one thing that's going to be interesting to see, I mean, they are definitely going like outside the scope, trying new things with this, because this is so bizarre to have it in Path of Exile. It just doesn't fit, but it's kind of fun, because for me, it's like something, again, that you can just, when you don't feel like mapping, go play around with this and try it out and have a different experience. And it's really kind of cool to have like a team of people fighting with you.
Yes.
Because at first
I was kind of like,
chose.
I'm always team
the
based,
button and they're just saying play and see what happens. Like, I don't want to do that, but I love that you set it all up, and then you're in there with them trying to like, attack and plan it out.
I'm a big fan. Like, we were talking last night about the old school Rainbow Six games where you're in control of your Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta teams.
Totally.
We were talking about Dragon Age and how, you'll love After Dark, people. We almost talked about Path of Exile. But, Dragon Age, and you're in charge of your team, and you're going through and you're building up the different RPG aspects. And I like that. Like, I know that's what MOBAs are. And I said at the beginning, I'm not a big MOBA fan. They're a lot less RPG-ish in that way, unless you're actually leveling up the turtle and all this. But one thing that I was really impressed with, actually, they didn't talk about co-op with that, did they? But I don't remember. But
did briefly.
The one thing that I did like is that it did seem like those team members, the AI team members that you could have, were good enough.
Yeah.
That you didn't have to do everything. They weren't just distractions. Like, I could be my slow, tanky player and have the Wolf Phoenix thing go off and actually destroy the totems. Like, that's a legit way to win, and awesome, because I'm slow. And I loved hearing, again, back to Path of Exile 2, then Path of Exile 1, that slower stationary players are constantly being considered. Sure, there's limitations to buffing them or making them more legit in the current game, but the setup of how skills work and the benefit of stationary versus, it seems like it's a lot more even keeled in Path of Exile.
That's why you should love Chieftain. That's focused on slow players to the point where it's a slow player that doesn't even move.
There was a stationary perk, but all the ones that for my current righteous, I'm not going to be one of those players like, I don't like what you did with Chieftain because you messed with my build. It's
just because you're righteous.
It does screw up my build completely. I don't really.
Well, your focus would become substantially different in the you could still do Righteous Fire Chieftain.
Well, there's no leech. And I was really surprised in the Chieftain that's coming up. There's no life regen keystones. There still might be in the transition, but their life regen
was the life regen on the Guardian? I thought the top one was a
life. The Guardian had some life regen. The Guardian changes were quite cool.
Neither of them are good enough for me to be
still not tempting for me as an aura player. I've always had criticisms to ascendancy changes. Granted, they haven't done many, but the old Pathfinder, when it came to Herald of Agony, when Herald of Agony first came out, and then when they changed the Guardian to the Purity of Herald of Purity, I think it was.
Okay.
Both of those skills, when they introduced those Herald skills, they had specific keystones on those ascendancies for those. And I don't like that. Yep. To me, that's a lot less. That's further away from the path of any ascendancy can use any skill, just find a way to make it work. And so now that I'm curious what the Guardian's new summons are.
Yeah, I hope that.
But they are very specific too. There's two. There's an elemental relic, and then there's something else, some sort of sentinel that shows up. So I'm really curious what those are.
Mm-hmm. And if they do more than just what the tooltip says, because the tooltip, or not tooltip, but the little line underneath the sentinel is just that it takes 10% of the damage you would take from attacks. And I was like, hopefully there's more.
Hopefully that's just a buff that you get as opposed to.
Hopefully it actually does something as well.
So yeah, we'll see what those are like. Like for me, I always have to see things in gameplay, but for my Righteous Fire build that's currently using the Chieftain, it all revolves around endurance charges, gaining and losing endurance charges, all the life regen you get from it, the big boost. Like the biggest turn on for me was actually just that plus 100% to fire resist that you get. So it was a lot easier for leveling. So don't know what I'm going to do with my Righteous Fire build, but that's not a that's not a criticism or a complaint. It's life as a Path of Exile player, right? And the life of a standard player.
Yeah, right.
So it does mean, though, that I don't think I can stomach being a juggernaut with Righteous Fire. I hate being a cookie cutter. Like, I just don't want to do.
Just don't pay attention to what other people do.
I know, it's just so difficult being what everybody else does. You know what I mean? Like, I might go back to an elementalist and use the golems.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe I'll do a Righteous Fire Guardian instead.
I don't know. We'll see. What else did we have? So 322 is looking exciting. That's going to be fun. So I'm just quickly scrolling through to it so we don't miss anything. We did what else did we get to see? The Ed, Rory, and Jonathan was fun to watch. Matt Damon up there.
Yeah, Matt Damon in the middle. Gosh, gorgeous employees. GGG.
Oh, yeah.
Good for you.
So cute. That was cool. The animation part we were kind of like Matt, but the actual skill stuff they talked about was fun. And then what do we have? Some gameplay.
Oh, the narration was great. Hey, with Kit and Cat Noodle. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Go ahead, do your thing.
That was next. Yep, you're right. That was good.
That was really interesting. I really like hearing that.
Perfect person to have spoken to him because she gets what he's talking about. There were so many times that those two said words that I was like,
right. Like we were wondering at the beginning, at the very the pre-show, who the statue was behind. Purple and green leg lady. And then they were talking and we're like, and then all of a sudden when we saw the different presentations, we're like, that's the 322 lady. Oh, okay. And then when Kit and Cat Noodle's there, and then she's like, and Hinekora, and she does the little hand thing for the statue behind him, and we're both like, oh.
Yeah,
we totally knew that.
I actually missed her doing that because then later Tyler said, oh yeah, that's Hinekora, and I was like, who?
Right. And then I'm like, Justin, it's a Chieftain Keystone. Okay, obviously. But it was really cool hearing them talk. She's talking to the only writer for GGG now. Like there used to be three of them, and now it's just one. Yep. And so now she's like totally nerding out about her favorite part of the game. You know what I mean? She's just such a lore fan. He accidentally confirmed something for her that he didn't mean to, right?
I didn't even catch on to that.
About Alva dying or not dying. Jonathan accidentally, I think, maybe calls her a time traveler when she didn't hear that. She was doing something else at the time.
I don't know if Alva. You could tell me any of them are time travelers. I'd be like, all right.
Yeah, but like Jonathan specifically said she's Alva's a time. I think it was Jonathan said she's a time traveler, and then you have the writer. What was his name? Matt. And I liked how that said Kit and Cat Noodle and Matt. And but it was just really neat to see them talk, and like for him being so impressed with some of her questions.
Because she knows the stuff.
Right.
Like, yeah, like she actually
it's not like he doesn't know who she is. I mean, there's one lore person.
he's kept up with her stuff that she's done, and it was fun watching her decipher stuff. Again, I was lost for most of it, but it was cool to hear two people talk about the like very love the lore. They're just that's their thing, and trying to figure out, you know, she's asking questions, trying to like gauge when it was cracking me up because she's like, I don't know if you'll answer, and I was like, what? I don't even know what you're asking. Like, what is like, is that Doriani's Machinatum or whatever it was? And he's like,
it's very interesting that you would go there. No, like they were so great. It was awesome. A lot of fun. And that was something we were definitely going to watch, but it's probably the only thing we were excited to watch that we didn't care about or that
that we don't understand.
Right. Yeah. Like we're excited for skills and we know what that's going to mean. We're excited for how the animations work in the tree and this and like the sockets and all that kind of cool stuff. And then of course there's lore, and it's like we care about lore, but I don't know, it was just really interesting to watch because it was the one. Yeah, I guess you said it perfectly. It's the one thing we don't know anything about that we were still very curious about. It's cool. That was the one cool thing about mobile, is that mobile is based on 20 years before Path of Exile. Yeah. So that's kind of cool if you're into that kind of stuff. And I like that Matt talked about the idea of trying to make lore work for idiots, and also that it's going to be different now, based on like, are you interacting with the NPCs? And if you're not, they're kind of going to mock you and, you know, not understand why you're there. Right. Which I feel like that's probably what eventually most people are just going to hear. Sure. You know, like as you play through the campaign too. Well, because he's a Zoom player, he was saying, before he joined the company. And so that was really interesting that, of course, they're still maintaining the prospect that you don't have to interact with NPCs at all if you don't want to. Mm-hmm. You can still accomplish the quest, but they are going to treat you different if you did skip and just by complete chance did exactly what the NPC wanted you to do. Yeah. So that was pretty interesting to hear. And then, of course, now because he's the only writer, there's a lot more cohesiveness to the mobile PoE 1 and PoE 2 story. Mm-hmm. It's a lot more intertwined. It's not as fragmented. And it was also really neat to hear him nerd out about previous leagues and previous content, but most specifically starts with an S. Oh, people loved it and hated synthesis. It was map building. Yes, synthesis. All right, we're gonna wrap this up because we got to go watch the thing, and I can hear somebody about to like cut the lawn, or I hear a weed whacker or something going. Let's wrap this up. We're gonna go watch part 2. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed the ExileCon. This is gonna come out obviously after it's over, but we will catch you in part 2. So I'm not even gonna do it. Starts in like 5 seconds. Tyler's just gonna do his little song to send us out. What song? Oh. And we're back. Part 2, but it's still the same episode. I haven't seen Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail in a very long time, and I am ashamed to say that I have not watched it every single year of my life. But that's how I remember their intermission music going. They had like a 30-second intermission in the movie, and that's how I remember it. So I hope it's pretty much nailed it. Relatively close that people could at least connect the two dots. I got to try and not move around so much. I noticed that because Tyler and I are holding the mics like real pros because we're still in person. Hanging in out his living room, hanging out on the couch. Yeah, we just finished day 2 of ExileCon. We ended just after the round table, so we're not watching the race at the end. We might catch that later, but it wasn't something we were going to talk about, so there was no reason to wait. So here we are recording after day 2. And what a day 2. I have to admit, now that the expectations are ignored or passed, and we've kind of discussed the highs and lows of the hopes of the initial keynote presentation and then the disappointment, but also like if we were to rewatch the keynote presentation now, we'd be like, oh, but we've seen so much gameplay. We've seen so many Q&As. I mean, the last talk we just saw with those 7 our ARPG super studs was just so awesome. Crypt did a fantastic job with all of his questionnaires and interviews that he did. And what an interesting little dynamic. I agree with him at the beginning that would have been rad for 10 hours instead of 1, but pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, no, day 2, the level of epicosity
was
Oh, who came up with that?
Mark.
Was that Mark? Oh,
yeah,
man.
he said it in his little chat with I don't remember who it was with, but it was in his.
They were talking about bosses. That was at the beginning of the streamer day. That was a rewind from yesterday.
Oh, was it the?
And so it was the first thing that we saw. I think we didn't listen to the. No offense to the individual doing it, but rendering Path
I
of
heard
Exile.
it was actually really good.
Oh, we're gonna have to
rewatch that. But yes, we did miss the rendering, but that was just because we were recording this and I was editing, and it was basically as fast as we could get done. The amount of content that we are putting out for this episode is so much more than normal. So especially if you're a patron, you're going to enjoy a lot of extra content. So anyway,
so welcome to part two,
but it's all in the same episode. You know, we don't leave you hanging. So it's just a little bit of Tyler's song, and it's like we never left. So let's talk about today. We saw the part with the bosses with Neon, which was cool.
Yeah, definitely did a lot of confirmation
right?
for us in that, like how the hitboxes in today's game are just a big square. The hitboxes for that game are as close to the body structure as possible, which is the difference between being capable of moving under large monsters, or the game auto aiming, if it's not with your mouse, the game auto aiming to the closest part of the hitbox for it. I don't think they mentioned anything like certain parts of the hitbox are more vulnerable than others, like in other games, like
it's not like you're going to hit a leg and knock them over or something,
or like a head and it's an extra damage point. I don't think they mentioned anything like that, but it's still going to hit the most convenient part, and just the pride that he has in his boss designs and how proud he is of just bosses in general. You ask him anything, what's your favorite boss? Before you even finish the question, he's like, boss.
No.
And yeah, it was a really interesting one, to the point where he was so excited about it, he didn't even get to talk about the new 600 monsters. All he talked about was bosses.
Yeah, it was cool seeing the different bosses and the mechanics behind them and their thoughts behind how they were going to work. And they looked awesome. Like, they looked really cool. Very. It's crazy too, because it's 100 bosses in the acts.
6 acts.
And it's just, that's crazy. And I mean, granted, we saw, I don't know, maybe 6 bosses through the whole week, maybe 6 bosses
maybe
total,
8, and
but
they
all
did
different.
a great job controlling which boss. Like, they were all available in the demos, right? And I mean, but they didn't show Act 1 almost at all. Nobody played the monk in all the playthroughs. Everybody picked the freaking warrior.
Yeah, it was a bit annoying. I'm going to say, like, one critique to them doing, the idea of them doing ExileCon this early with regards to it is, they should have had all the classes available to be seen and played. Like, we never got to saw the witch, we never got to saw the druid. Like, there were a number of ones that we didn't get to see, which was a bit unfortunate, because it did feel like we were just watching the warrior over and over. And this is no offense to Ziz, because he can pick whatever class he wants, but he was the first gameplay to happen outside of the official demo, and he picked the sorceress, but they were just playing the sorceress. So yes, he was the only one that ended up picking the sorceress, but he picked a class that they'd just finished playing on the demo for us Twitch viewers. And then he goes and he plays the same thing. And it ended up being a good choice, because if you were to only watch the gameplay demos that the streamers did, he was the only one that did that. But then everybody else picked the warrior until you got to Crip, who did the Huntress. Yes. And that was really exciting, because they actually played with new weapon base types and new skills. And Crip got an hour, so he was given unofficial permission to really take his time, read everything, kind of explore. And so it was pretty cool to see all those bosses, though, getting back to that, all the different ones they did. But then they kept going back to the same ones, even the ones like that Camille was showing music for and all that. They made sure that all bosses were the same. You know what I mean? It was the same 8 or whatever were going to come up. So then after that, we had the item design, which was with Dane and Rishi, which that presentation was fantastic.
Wasn't it?
Like Dane, it was cool to hear from, he's very passionate about the artwork, which was really cool. Yeah. And just listening to his, descriptions and how he talked about it was really good. And then Rishi with the mechanics of stuff. It's really fun hearing from their developers. And again, I think we mentioned this already in the first part of the episode, but it's so clear their passion for their game.
They really like it. Like, there's maybe they only pick people. Maybe they're like the only 12 people at GGG that like their job, and you know, so that's why they were picked to be on stage. But no, it really seems like everyone there is like, I am making this game better, and I know how to make it better, and I'm excited to make it better. Like even when Dane was like, this is how I've designed them all. This is how just the icons look right now. This is this. They might change everything. This might have nothing to do with gameplay later on or how it's implemented into the game, but like how all single-handed melee weapons face the right and all how two-handed weapons face the left and all those little details. But it was really neat to see. And of course, the game mechanics and just the excitement on Rishi's face and seeing how it all works together, but all the little questions you have about the game that are unintentionally answered just as they're talking in general. You know what I mean? Like when Chris is talking in that big Q&A at the end, or when Jonathan's talking in his Q&A, or all of them. Like there's just small little sentences they say that make you like, oh, okay. Where it's not a part of the actual answer, but it's a question that you had that you forgot about for so long.
Or you didn't even know you had.
Yeah, so that's for me the real excitement for watching all the GGG comments and interviews. I think it's a lot of fun for sure. Do you remember what we were just talking about? Even though there's like a half a second gap between that, we had a little break.
We never left.
Right, except we have no idea what we were just saying.
Yeah, we were finishing up just chatting about Rishi and Dane.
Oh, right.
And it was great. It was good. I enjoyed
fantastic. I love it. They're so fun. And it's just so fun seeing people's faces as they're talking about things and interacting with the crowd. Unfortunately, they don't have you said it would suck, but I think it would be fun if they had the crowd mic'd next time because
then you'd hear too many other people that were booing like when they don't like the change they're making. I mean, it only happened once that we heard.
Oh yeah. What was that? It
was Rishi. It was one of the things we're coming up to, but it was their talk about, it
was when they were on the panel, not in Rishi's.
No, it was the panel. So anyway, they were really good. Then we had the streamer roundtable, which we didn't really watch.
No, we didn't.
And then we did some lunch, I think, around then. And then we had the developer panel, this was really cool. This was Jonathan, Mark, Rory, and Rishi.
That was very interesting.
Yeah, that one was all just around everything.
Just Q&A, whatever.
Hey.
Whatever people had already come up with at the convention. Yeah. Sorry if you hear us like snapping or like we're not talking to each other.
My dog is staring at the door for some reason as if something's about to happen.
Chica. Hi.
So anyway, their panel was there were good questions. The panel was fun to listen to. I love Rory. Like I find Rory is just he's very knowledgeable. He's well spoken, but he's kind of shy. So it's like when he talks, you really want to pay attention to what he's saying because he knows what he's saying.
And he's also a part of so many of the decisions or hopes. Like I remember him at was it the last ExileCon? No, it was one of the wraeclast interviews after, like a couple of years ago after a league launch. And he was the interviewer after the announcement, and he was talking about his excitement of finally getting Herald of Agony into the game. You know what I mean? And how long he'd been hoping for it. And in this one, just his excitement of like, he's been wanting Spirit to be in the game for years,
yeah, he was saying
he said. And now PoE 2 is finally his chance to put it back forward to the bosses again and see. And so it's kind of neat when you have somebody that's involved in so much of the creativity as opposed to just the application to have so much knowledge about the game. So it is very cool. And then of course you have items and uniques and the passive tree, and then you have monsters and enemies and game mechanics like with Rishi, and then you have the game mechanics with Mark. But I mean, they all know so much, right? So it's really it's just so interesting having them chit chat. And
there was some interesting information that came out of that both of us kind of liked and were curious about how to play out. One was the talk of no crafting table. Was interesting. Yeah, we were talking in the first half of this episode about how it's just really cool how deterministic things are now. They're getting rid of, and we didn't discover, we only knew about the chromatics and the jewelers and how those were going to work, but that was very deterministic. And then since then we've discovered that there's no more alt spamming, like alterations have been completely removed from the game. Chaos orbs are completely different now. So I don't know if I like it.
It's like an annul and an exalt wrapped in one, which what are they going to do about exalts and annuls?
Well, I mean,
That's an interesting thing.
It is. Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on if there is still actually no crafting table in the end. Like the idea he was saying was no crafting table, but you can use gold to buy the items from the vendors, and the vendors can have gear that might have stuff that helps you out as you're leveling, which is cool. I don't know where I fall on the whole like the way that he talks and that they talk about it is this idea of that they want the loot to be the loot that drops. That's the loot that you're getting. And I could not agree more. But if something doesn't change with loot, this doesn't fix it. In fact, this actually might make it worse. So like,
because now you have to pick up so much more in hopes that it's legit. And there's so much garbage. So one thing they did not, and I was disappointed, that was one question that was missed in every Q&A was that drop rates, drop quantity, that kind of stuff. I mean, Jonathan mentioned something cool that they're, unofficially getting rid of quantity and only using rarity as a double down for, like, if you have high rarity, that's also meaning like your currency drops are going to drop from that, and bosses are going to drop a lot more currency, and it's your best place to get rare currency. And so that was really cool to simplify that aspect, because to anyone that's not a PoE vet, that means the exact same thing. Rarity is sweet. There's a rarer currency. I have higher rarity. I'm going to have that drop with a higher rarity number. So that makes a lot of sense. And so it was interesting to hear how they would go from this non-crafting to crafting, but then also getting rid of the alts. But now it's like, though I think
if you get rid of the alts, you've made magic items not super useful, and you're never going to be trying to get a magic item set the way you want before you would regal it. And you're hoping on drops. What I feel like a lot of the times when they were talking is that it's really pushing Ruthless into PoE 2, which is fine for some, like there's no Quicksilver flasks, there's no crafting.
Yeah, that's right.
And
I love their Firmancer.
Yeah, which is fine, but you have to make the drops better, because Path of Exile 2 can't be Ruthless in the sense that you can't just go like, you're never going to see an item, and when you see an item, it's probably going to give you one stat that's going to work for you. It has to drop still a lot of items or good items. And then in the chaos example, like again, we'd have to play it and like play it for a while to get a better understanding, because their feeling was, well, we didn't want a chaos to just be like as if you just got another rare. You just roll a chaos onto it, and it's as if another rare just dropped, and that's what's happening. And in this case now, it's like, well, no, you can roll off a random modifier and add a random modifier. Okay, well, so I could just brick my item if I happen to roll off the high life or something that I needed on that item. So I don't want to see Ruthless PoE 2. I want to see it bring stuff in that you think works in Ruthless. That's fine, but I still want to see items on the ground often. And if you're going to say that those should be my upgrades, then you have to do something to the drops. Yep. So
maybe rarity. I really loved your idea that maybe rarity also improves the chance of having higher tier rolls on those items.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Or, the old idea that you and I have talked about 100 times of the higher the item base, the higher the lowest threshold is for the lowest tier of mod it can roll. So to quickly explain that, if you have an item 86, pretend all the item levels are going to be the same in PoE 2. You have an item level 86 item drop. Maybe the lowest tier it can drop or roll is
a tier 5 and up.
Tier 5 or tier 6, right? And then, because then, all this like dependency on crafting will work if a lot of mediocre items drop, because you can make a mediocre item into a good item with one change. You cannot make a crap item turn into a good item with very deterministic crafting and no crafting bench. Like we're talking like there's no craft.
Do you think the crafting bench doesn't come after you beat the axe? Like maybe that's something that unlocks.
I don't. I think that this is very intentional. Well,
there has to come from somewhere. Where do you get the random one-off things that you can get on an item? Like triggers a spell. Like I get it. I guess that's not a great example, because that kind of stuff isn't going to exist. But there are some modifiers, unless they're going to become part of the normal pool of modifiers, which, if that's the case, it just makes me a little bit nervous, because the more I listen to them talk, and I do like the ideas, I'm fine with it. You want to dump Quicksilvers? Okay. let's see how that plays
I'm
out.
fine with that.
Yeah,
I'm
let's see
fine
how
with
that plays out. But all right, you might have just heard my dog bark. But anyway, if you want to get rid of all that stuff and bring in that sort of ruthless style, I'm not opposed to it, but I don't want to play ruthless PoE. I just don't. That's not my style of game. I don't want to play ruthless, so I want to still see gear. I still want to see items, and I want to know that I can get items that are going to be better for me, and not at this like, terrible rate and the hope of having to roll a regal on an item.
We're back again. Dog removed. We've forgotten what we were talking about again. Oh, you were talking about a lack of crafting bench, how things.
I don't want to see blue items drop and hope for that I have regals to spare, and then I don't know. I don't want to play ruthless. That's all I'm saying. So however it comes through, I don't care if they make the changes. I'm fine with it as long as they still make Path of Exile a loot based game that's not a rare loot based game.
Right. Now, here's like a lot of ruthless seems to be going in. I mean, you don't know what drop rates are going to be like. I mean, maybe chromatics are really rare. Maybe they're really common. Who knows? Crafting recipes are still in the game, despite the fact that the majority of your stuff doesn't turn in for currency anymore. Like your main source of transmutes
so how is there
no longer
recipe?
turning.
Does that mean like you're not selling stuff for chromatics? So what's the?
Well, you might sell stuff for chromatics. We just didn't see them trade. Like everything.
But gear doesn't roll with sockets. So like.
Oh right, yeah. Oh, I wish Octavian expanded on that crafting recipe question.
Yeah, because they were really quick to be like, yeah, crafting recipe's still in there. And then we saw somebody sell some items and they got gold. And I was like, well.
Right. So you're right. So you can't get chromatics anymore. Or sorry, you can't, there's no more linked gear for chromatics the old fashioned way. There's no more 6 socket for that. There's no 6 socket for the jewelers. So they have new crafting recipes. Who knows what they are? I do like the inclusion of gold, though, as a more condensed version of currency. If you're not going to get your normal currency from trading in, like the transmutes and the alterations that you, and maybe alch shards that you would normally get from turning all that in. I mean, that was a nice way to stock that up. So they're obviously, in retrospect now, they're going to be changing the drop rates of these currency items and over time too, right? Remember, this isn't going to come out perfect, but now all you're getting for the most part is gold. Gold helps you find.
Gold needs its own slot in the UI. The fact that it's in your stash is awful.
That was not Grimro. That was Gazi that said that, and I agree. The prospect, though, of gold basically helping you find a base type is interesting, because that's essentially all it is. It's helping you find a base type that you can build upon. So now you're running with transmutes.
Yeah, the new orbs look cool too.
They do. The new orbs
transmutes, very, augments, cool. Regals, alchemies, chaos, divines.
It's interesting. So yeah, I'm really curious to see what those drop rates are going to be and how overflowing are going to be with certain items, or if we're going to need to be very careful. I'm sure the drop rates of items will change tons. I think we're still going to have way more loot than I'll ever want, just because of the amount of base types that they seem to have already. They seem to have so many base types for so many different types of armor and weapons already, but they're not doing the redundant implicit system that they're currently doing in Path of Exile 1. So the
implicits look pretty cool on the ones
they do. They look amazing, but how many are there going to be? Because if there are that many different implicits that aren't building upon each other, for example, the calling and convening one, or calling, convening, and convoking ones, you have that implicit that slowly gets better. Almost every implicit is like that now, where you have the lower, middle, and better version of it. Sometimes that goes up 4 or 5 tiers, like in a chest piece. So imagine, though, if in this game, every base type had a different implicit. That'd be crazy. But there's way more base types in this game than they're saying are in PoE 2. So hopefully, this sounds really stupid saying it out loud, but hopefully we don't have to have a customized filter. Hopefully the default filter.
There's no way.
I'm just not necessarily the default filter, but just like how their items are. Like hopefully that's okay. Like now it's stupid and impossible, but hopefully for PoE 2, it's actually fine. You can improve upon it, sure, but hopefully it's fine.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think it'll still be a make your own filter type thing. But yeah, their talk was cool. It was fun hearing them answer questions, and I thought the questions were actually quite good. And one thing that I said to Tyler while we were watching it, one of the things I really like with Jonathan and Mark is they're unapologetically just set. Like they'll say what they're thinking and how they want to do it, and they're okay.
Yeah, these are the decisions that we've made, and you'll get used to it. You'll be fine, customer.
Yep. It was fun too hearing one of the questions actually make Mark kind of like open his eyes, and he's like, "Oh," with the idea of like doing a cast on dodge. Like,
that's right. He seemed actually quite interested in that.
Well, he said shortly later, he's like, "Well, we've already confirmed we're going to do a cast on dodge."
Right. No, they're so good with just that humility that comes with knowing they don't know everything, but they're doing their absolute best. And yeah, it was really cool watching them all up there and answer those questions live.
Yeah, I thought the questions were good.
One thing that actually really, what is that? Oh, my notes didn't save my last two notes. This was actually in the first session of the day, but I forgot to say it was. So remember you and I were talking about like the different kinds of classes or ascendancies that were going to be added to the game. Of course, we didn't know that they were going to be added in this way, but we were talking about, okay, so every class is going to have another class with a whole bunch of other ascendancies and all that kind of stuff. And so we were guessing about which ones, and we said like, oh, there has to be a warlock, there has to be a druid, has to be a monk and that kind of stuff. So we were right on a few of them, but it was funny hearing Jonathan. I think this was just in his one-on-one Q&A where he's like, it's funny how the classes and ascendancies actually worked out, because we knew we really wanted a druid class, but we had nowhere to put it. So it was basically them forcing themselves to have a druid class. And I think they put that in the int dex category. Was it? I forget which category it was, but anyway, and that's where they matched. And they're like, okay, well, now that we have two classes for the int dex category, well, now we have to have two classes for every attribute category, all six, meaning strength, dex, int, and then all the split classes. So it's kind of funny how the druid basically was the catalyst for how they were organizing the new system. But interesting, because we were asking each other questions while we were waiting for day 2 to show up. And as we were, we went to the gas station to get some treats and stuff. And it's like, what's going on with the scion? Like, we remember the list of all the characters in the trailer, and there was nothing scion related. Maybe one of the extra characters is a scion, but then we started asking questions, and then one of us went back through the trailer of the actual the third PoE 2 trailer, the first one that they put out yesterday, and all of a sudden we realized that we paused the video, and in the center of the tree is the warrior icon, like where your ascendancy is.
Whatever class you pick.
Right. And then all of a sudden, and this was before they confirmed that the scion's no longer going to be in the game at all, that there's going to be enough variety and capability of travel with the new tree and with the new variety of ascendancies that...
Yeah, Rory said it just didn't fit.
Right. And so they were just scrapping the scion completely. But it was pretty cool to discover that and then see that we're actually going to start in the center of the tree. And the passive tree looks totally different.
It looks fun.
They say you'll be able to travel better from one side to the other, but it's still going to be, he said it'll be easier to spec into generic content. For example, like with axes, there's only one axe cluster.
Yep.
Everything else will be generic. So like then there'll be probably one mace, one scepter, one all of this, but then everything else will be generic damage. And he did emphasize that. So that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be pretty cool. They had, so after their talk, we had Crip played for a bit, which was fun to watch.
That was nice because Crip was playing the one ascendancy that nobody else was touching, and that was the Huntress. The Huntress wasn't in any of the demos, whereas the Monk and the Warrior and the Sorceress were. So that was nice, and that's what he spent. He was the only one that had 45 minutes. Everyone else had half an hour. He had an hour, but he used his first 45 minutes on the class that nobody had seen yet. And so, except for the very beginning of 2019, when they were doing the spear work at the beginning of Act 2.
Right.
And so that was really cool to see. And definitely took his time with the skills and troubleshooting. And it wasn't done with arrogance. There was just a lot of nice humility of trying to figure things out and checking things out for us. And that was a nice gameplay for sure.
Yep. We saw before we watched his thing, you and I were looking at the new character screen, which looks pretty cool. I like there's a lot of information on the single page.
Lots with a deflect defensive stat kicking in there somewhere. There were 5 stats in there. Now there was life, armor, evasion, energy shield,
spirit,
deflect, and spirit.
Yeah, there was quite a few. Then there was block, and there was there was a lot of stuff. So
nicely laid out.
I like that
it's
on one
little
spot.
PIP.
It needs some color. Like everything was just that brown tone. I'm sure that's all going to get worked out. But like, make fire resist look red or something, just to draw your eye to it. But I like that I'm not flicking through tabs. It did look like you were scrolling, which my personal opinion, I'd rather scroll than tabs.
Agreed.
Then I can, you know what I mean? Like that is actually preferable to me. But yeah, the character screen looked cool. So anyway, Crip, we watched him, and then our guys, Camille and Kane, did their music part. It was my favorite. It was my favorite one.
Really?
Oh yeah,
good for you.
For sure. I find that stuff so just that's the part of games, and especially in Path of Exile, and I go back to like Diablo 2, that always just blows me away. Like the ability to create something that when you hear it later, you know it. Like there's something memorable to that sound or that noise or whatever it is. I just find that crazy. And then the ability to just create different stuff for so many things is just incredible. Like all these different zones, all these different there's 100 bosses. We're just in the acts that that they've got to create custom sounds for, and Camille with his scores, and it's just, I find that stuff awesome.
Insane. And then they mentioned mystery boxes, and I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah. Then they have like the different the different package packs, boxes. Right? They have so much to do. Now, I remember when we were talking with Camille before, like he's finished all that stuff. You know what I mean? So then once all this dies down, then it's the new league that he has to make music for, and then it's the new microtransaction and the new trailer. I can't imagine how busy it is now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because he still has that to do. Well, I mean, that's why they hire the second person, but he still has that to do and oversee, but literally a different song for each boss and each environment. I think the trailer said there was 100 unique like locations and environments.
Yeah. I don't remember how many there were, but yeah, like, so with Kane, it was cool because you got to see like his videos. I mean, he's very clever too. He had some good jokes, but his like hearing what's his method for doing it. What are their, seeing their staff in the sound room, like just doing stupid noises and
that was great.
Whatever, like that was really cool. And then just the way that they build it into sound and how they plan it all out. With Camille, the thing that floors me is the idea that a artist goes, this is a rough sketch of a building in the desert that's going to be this area. Go.
Right.
And then he plays what he plays, and you're just like, how did, like, where does that even, I don't get it. I don't get where that comes from.
To even know the amount of instruments that guy knows.
I know, when he just kept talking about like, oh, we used a little bit of this and then this and then this, and it's like, So I found that part, I just find that part so cool. And then getting to listen through some of them and some of the boss stuff, and their ability to work together is really cool too. Like how they plan things out for, like, they were talking about the siren fight, which we did watch, and how they had to plan for like when the siren's coming out of the water and when the different things are happening through that event, and how they have to make everything, like tie in together. So yeah, I just find that stuff awesome, like really good. It's too bad that they didn't do was there a question? Yeah, there was a question and answer, but it seemed short. Like it ended like 15-20 minutes early.
No, it was. It's also difficult, like a lot of the audio questions, as interesting as they are, when they come from commoners like us, they're all the same. What was the hardest thing you did? What was the favorite thing you did? Like, unless you know audio, unless you know music, like as a composer, like the questions are always so, and I'm not making fun of anyone. That was the questions I would have. You know what I mean? Like it's like, I'm talking the simple questions. I'm no composer. I wouldn't have those types of questions, but you know, like it's got to be tough when those are spur of the moment Q&A questions. They're all going to sound
Yeah,
like
I still it could have gone longer, but I really enjoyed theirs. It's funny you were just making that comment about like how people ask questions, and now we didn't watch this one. We are gonna have to watch it, but the one that we missed was the rendering one with I guess Alexander. But at the very end, we did catch the very end, and he started talking about something, but he pulled out a Reddit voice at the very end, and I was like, oh my god, he just said that.
Yeah.
He's talking about it was awesome.
Yeah, why don't you just do
Why don't you do this? Just the way he said it, I was like, holy shit, that's one of our Reddit voices.
Man, that's great.
Yeah. So anyway, I love the Kane and Camille part. That was probably one of my, well, besides the round table. The round table was incredible, but
with all the big shots at the end,
which we're gonna get to in a second. Yeah.
Yep.
Then we had the animation interview, which was cool with Sam and Ed. Also, we have to shout out Sam with his pumps, the Reebok pumps.
That was the first thing, Justin. As soon as that interview started with Matt Damon and Sam,
they
had Justin.
Yeah, I was in the other room.
He's wearing
pumps. I was like what?
Justin's the sneaker guy. Can I call him sneakers?
Yeah.
Is that whatever? That's all right. Well, no, there's no like hot shot term
as long as you don't touch him. You can call him whatever you want.
All right. So Justin's the sneaker guy. He's got $1 billion of sneakers in this house. He probably doesn't even wear his shoes outside. But I'm a fan of pumps. Like I'm a flip flop guy. I'll wear flip flops till it snows, and maybe even after. But if I had a pair of pumps, if I could afford a pair of pumps, every single day I'd walk out of my house and go,
yeah, give him a little pump,
and then I go,
pep in your step.
That's right. Look how far I can jump now. But man, but he had legit pumps. Like those were wicked, green and brown. And then of course, I mean, Matt Damon's just looking as good as ever.
Yeah, just both of them.
That animation department's sexy.
Good looking guys.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to work there. I'd be no, I can't. My mind's just racing too much.
Yeah, they're
that was interesting.
Yeah, I like listening to them talk. I really like I like both of them, but Sam was very comfortable, which is it's uncommon to see in most of the developer stuff that we've seen when them talking. Like he was totally just like laid back, chill, he was definitely comfortable in it. But yeah, it was cool listening to them talk about how they
even Ed Damon seemed much more comfortable the second go around when he was on the couch as opposed to in front of everybody. Maybe he was just as comfortable in both, but he seemed much more smiley and comfortable with his answers.
Yeah, it was fun listening to them talk about how they do, how they deal with all the animations and how things have changed with PoE 2. And so I actually thought Ziz did a good job on that one too.
Yeah, all the interviewers did.
What did we have next? We did. Oh, there was the showcase. It wasn't Steel Mage, even though that's what it said. It was Nugian and Neon. That was fine. It was just the warrior again.
Yeah, and Nugi doesn't know that. Like, I'm not.
No,
it's
the
not criticism that everybody's playing warrior. That's not a streamer criticism. I wish GGG told them, to play a certain class or something, or like even if it was like at the end. And they're like, Noogie, normally we've been telling people that they can choose whatever they want, but nobody's played the monk. So sorry, you have to do the monk. Like, I just wish they did some of that. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really change much because...
No, it is still what it is, but it would have been nice from us at home watching to have seen some variance. And it didn't seem like there was much variance. The only thing that I thought was funny that stood out to me was when Neon was like, you're doing this. It's not a criticism because I've seen everybody doing it, but you just keep running into packs. It's not Path of Exile 1. Like you gotta,
you kill what you have when you get there.
Yeah.
Don't bring them all together.
Yeah.
But no, it was interesting. And I felt kind of bad for Noogie, and he said it out loud, but he's the kind of player where he would like to keep going at that boss or circumstance that he's failing at until he gets it. But for our sake, he went to other areas to experience other things. And so that was nice.
And then we had the final part, the round table, which was fantastic. Really, really good.
So cool. And like, it's one of those where I can
we weren't going to watch it. We actually had debated not watching
it. Really interested me. It was definitely something I was going to watch either here or after our recording. But I assume you could appreciate it so much more because I don't know if you ever played Diablo 1, but you definitely played a lot of Diablo 2. I didn't get into the ARPG scene until
Diablo 3, right?
Well, I guess the Dreamcast days, but I never got into it on PC gaming or anything like that. So like the first thing that they were touching, like I've played Torchlight, but Diablo 3 came out before I think Torchlight 1. And like I'd played versions of ARPGs, but like different sport, like I've referenced the Armada on the Dreamcast and other games like that where
it's not the ARPG style, but like the
right drop based games where I'd be excited about modifying my build, but nothing extreme. So I'm sure you appreciated that because you played those specific games.
Oh yeah, that was
much
such
more
a
than I did.
heavy hitter group of people there. It was cool to see Eric back.
Yeah, that was nice.
With them too. Yeah, that was I thought
with an Omnitech shirt too, Eric.
I didn't notice
being bossy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, the whoever he was for the boss. It got good as they started to get more comfortable with being up there and it being more of a round table versus like Crip ask a question and they go down the line and answer it. I liked as it progressed, it actually got into a conversation where they were sort of having the back and forth. I loved, I can't remember which Schaefer brother it is, but the one in the middle, because he just was very
Eric with a CH.
Yeah, he was just super comfortable just like starting the conversation and talking about whatever was going on. And David Brevik's just awesome. Like I really appreciate he was the
far right on in the Blizzard shirt.
Yep, the Diablo 2 guy. Like he's been involved with GGG for a long time. Like he was there back in ExileCon, the first one, and it was
that's so cool that they can be buddy. They're in a way competitors.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know what any of those guys' affiliation with Diablo 3 is, but they
had nothing to do with it.
Still, like if you're in Torchlight, you're kind of competing. And if you're trying to make a new ARPG, I mean, you're competing against. And so for them to be free with their information and just be chatty and helpful.
Disagree. I like that they're they're open to the fact that they have differences in opinions and they're all still like, that's what being an adult is.
Yes.
It's like, we don't agree, but we're still buddies and we're still going to have a good time and, whatever. So
I hope everyone in Reddit or like the negative voices online, the people that would be like, I hope they saw the fun they had with disagreements. Like right off the bat, Crip's first question was one of the more controversial ones. What do you do about telegraphing?
Mm-hmm.
Where do you stand on telegraphing?
Yeah.
Majority of them are like, don't do it.
But 1.5 were like to
right. Yeah. So yeah, it was really, that was such a wonderful hour to listen to. And I'm not even privy to experience in those games. Like you have Crip up there totally understanding Eric's thing. Like, well, you remember 1.11 when you nerfed this, and Crip's like, oh, I remember the combo.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't imagine what it'd be like for you to like go through and hear
their
cool
little hearing them
points.
all talk. Like, especially because they have so much history between them. And you have, like, while Diablo didn't, like, create the ARP genre, it definitely progressed it more than anything
blew
else
it out
ever
of the water.
Had done. And so, and then it is, like, Diablo 2 is the basis for Path of Exile, the game that we play. So it's just, I don't know, it's really cool hearing those guys talk with the history that they have, the things they've been involved with, and, just, like, their opinions on things. And some of the questions cracked me up because they were clearly geared towards Chris. And I think one thing I did like is quite often those questions got derailed by someone else to the point where it wasn't like it was so pointed at Chris and Path of Exile, because I think there are still some issues with, people are still grasping with some of the stuff with PoE 2 and, some of the things that they're changing, and they're struggling with the idea of there's going to be some change. But I like that these other guys just like turned it into a conversation between buddies versus like trying to appease whoever might have asked the question or, get the rise that they were looking for. But
yeah, for sure. And I think it's really interesting because Path of Exile got its gem socketing system from Diablo 2, but also from the Final Fantasy series. I heard Eric in an interview years ago reference the Final Fantasy series for gem socketing skills as well.Maybe it was Chris. But it was really neat to hear where Diablo got it from. It was just a quick idea from
a friend of one of the developers.
Who was the guy on the far right with the Blizzard
David
shirt?
Brevik.
Yeah, like his brother,
right?
Just quickly mentioned something. Right, he was just like, it was at the dinner table or whatever, and he quickly says it, and then Eric in the middle is like, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
And then but that's where Path of Exile gets his stuff from. So that was really cool. I love that.
Yeah, that round table was great.
I said that I wasn't making notes for the first point, but today was a lot slower. Like there's no keynote today, so there was a lot less to pay attention to, especially with all the gameplay that they had. So I wrote down a couple notes for things that and there's going to be tons of stuff from day one that if I was to watch again, I'd make tons of notes. So maybe we'll do that in episode 200, but in the hot tub.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to write down, or I would like to specify that all hardcore players can suck it royally. Screw you, cheaters. You're going to play hardcore the way I want you to now in Path of Exile too. Oh, man.
Our private leagues are going to be awful.
Oh, it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Like, they have a cooldown on portals, and the portal disappears as soon as like the engagement works. So the only time you can lay a portal in a boss fight is after the combat started. You can't do it in the invincible stage. And then there's, what else was it?
2-second cast. You can't Alt F4 or log out macro because it'll
bring you back. Oh, I love it. He was so specific with his smile when he was like, "You're gonna get right back."
Yeah, right to the slam.
Right, it was so good. And there was a few other details that they said about flasks, for example, are much more difficult to maintain in boss fights.
Yeah, you don't get them anymore for hitting anything. And in fact, in a boss fight, you don't get them from any of the mobs spawned by the boss. You only get them during these certain states as the boss reaches different, like they're not phases all the time, but different states.
Yeah.
That's what will refresh your, besides teleporting back. But again, you got to find a window of 2 seconds to cast the
right. And how many, I mean, that's to me, that's like an Elden Ring thing that I'm going to have to apply to Path of Exile now, is when you finally get that boss stunned, or you finally get that
to the corner and teleport.
Reprieve, instead of getting those extra 3 hits in, you take that swig of your flask, right? And so in this case, it's the similar thing.
Yep.
But I guess like how flasks are going to work now, like that's not hardcore specific, of course, but flasks don't refill with normal kills.
No.
Only with now hopefully it turns into hits or like the amount of damage or threshold or something, but right now it's like kills with rares and uniques. Maybe magic, I forget whether
they could have meant magics. They just said not normals, but then they did say rares and uniques, but they could have just meant to say magic and rares.
That's
because
right.
Really what's like uniques, which shouldn't be, it should have been, maybe they meant to say magic and rares, but yeah, normals not giving you back flasks is going to be a pretty interesting change.
It is. And I mean, despite the excitement of the PoE 2 team to be like, your flasks are going to be situational, it'll be interesting to see how that works, because there is a Pathfinder. And yes, the Pathfinder can be completely reworked, or, well, I guess, because we're still going off the original convention's explanation of you're going to have these 6 classes and then the other 6 classes. So, I mean, there's tons of revamp there available, but I mean, there's got to be a flask class. You have
Does there?
12 times 3. You have 36 ascendancies.
Yeah, but they're changing flasks. Like flasks, we were talking about this where they talked about how flasks are going to be like utility and you have to plan when you use them. And you were saying like, well, they already have that. But what Rishi said is that's the roll on the flask, is like right now you can roll that as like a suffix or whatever, right?
Now it's a mod, yeah.
Now it's that, like, you have, it's not something that's been rolled onto it. That just
is the essence of it, yeah.
And so you may not see like a flask based class, because what would be the benefit of a flask based class if your primary focus of your flasks are actually life and mana? Like when Mark Neon was talking, he said at one point they had planned for only 2 flasks, and then there was something, I can't remember what he said, that they sorry that was for the start. No, that was just for the start at the very beginning. That's right. But so I don't know, maybe there isn't there's no Quicksilver flask. Like I
assume there's going to be, but it'll obviously be very different than, I mean, sorry, not obviously. My assumption is that they will have a flask class, but that it won't be aimed at perma sustain like the current Pathfinder is.
Yeah, but then it's not, I don't see how you have maybe some that benefit for some flask stuff, but not like a Pathfinder style, which is all flask focused.
Sure. Like I like some of the stuff that the current Pathfinder has, and I could see that going forward. Like every time you use a flask, you remove all elemental ailments. Every time you use a flask, you remove bleed. You know, that kind of stuff would be quite beneficial, because then you can have different flasks, and it'd be almost like having 6 unique flasks, or utility flasks. And
you know, one thing they never did, I don't know if I ever noticed, like if there's no alterations, are you only transmuting and augmenting a flask now and that's it? Like there's so many things I'm curious to see because so many of these things just seem ruthless.
Right.
And so
what do you like? The one thing that I hate about what's coming, if this decision was to stay, was your supports are drop only. Your support gems are drop only. I'm going to have 9 6 links eventually, and my supports are drop only because apparently the cutter gems, if I'm understanding it correctly, the uncut gems are only for active skills.
Yep.
That's a problem. I mean, some support skills are active skills. I don't know if they're going to keep something like Summon Phantasm support.
Well, yeah, that's the problem.
That can be your primary
supports
skill.
Are going to be though now. Like they're reworking support. Like it's all new. So who knows what that? I mean, we saw a lot of the ones drop that were similar ones we'd already seen before. So, yeah, like I saw Fork. I think Kripparrian got a Fork one. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if they just go solely off of it's just drop only for supports. But again, that feels ruthlessly. Like which is fine. I'm not going to be silly and say like, oh, I don't like it. That's not acceptable. The game's not even out. Like we haven't even seen it in any version of like a finished state. There's no Act 4 and 5. There's like multiple classes not even done. We never, ever saw an ascendancy. Like
it's weird to me that they didn't have the Druid prepared. Like that's the most unique class that everybody cheered for at the first ExileCon convention. And for them to not, I don't know, like out of the priorities for what would be available, I understand getting melee there. I do not understand a sorceress. We have an elementalist already. That's not a new gameplay session, despite the fact that your animations to spells are new. Sure, but then okay, so you have a huntress. That makes sense. That's a new like spear combo. But the monk, I get, but the druid, like to really not do shapeshifting, I get to like disallow it from the gameplay demo because then it would turn into exactly what it already was. Like everybody did the warrior this time around. If the druid was there, everybody would gotta try shapeshifting, right? And then nobody would have seen anything else. But I'm really surprised they didn't do that.
I would have rather seen all of the classes available. Like they talk so much about spirit, and we never once got to see a summon. Not even just a witch. We just didn't see a summon at all.
And that was really disappointing to me.
Yeah. And I'm not being a Debbie Downer or anything, but like we're 11 months from the closed beta. They did a convention and we didn't get to see some of the major stuff that they talked about. Some of the stuff that was going to be the most exciting to like hear about or see. It's just a little weird. So hopefully over the next few months, we'll get to see some video releases or trailers or something like a druid trailer or a summoner trailer or stuff that starts to showcase some of the stuff that we haven't seen yet. Like, again, it was interesting. I don't know if the people who were playing the game were told that they couldn't, but I never, ever saw a skill tree. I never saw someone open up the skill tree to start putting points in. Never. Not one person did I see open the skill tree.
Maybe it didn't work.
So because
we saw people level.
The only time I saw this, we did see people level. The only time I saw the skill tree was when Octavian and Neon were playing in the very beginning. That was the only time, and it was only to show those the specialty weapon swap things. Yeah. That was the only time I ever saw it. We never saw ascendancies.
It was a very specific part too,
right?
Like they did not zoom out at all.
So, like, there's still a lot of stuff that I'm curious to see, and it definitely maybe it gives them the ability to talk more now because they kept saying like after this we'll be able to talk about everything, and it's like, well, will you?
I don't think so. I think you have lots of secrets.
Yeah. So anyway, it'll be. Did you have any other notes?
Yeah, I have quite a few more. What time are we at?
You're fine. Go. What's the next one?
I'm also thirsty. I want to fill up my water. Thanks for letting me get my water, Jess. Feel so better. I feel so better. I feel so gooder. One thing that made me extremely excited, it wasn't a promise, but it was like this new ability within the mechanics and the design of the game is basically getting rid of, their hope is, the majority of off-screen damage. So
Neon said it will be should be completely eliminated.
Right. Now, granted, they don't do things like refusing off-screen damage. They added the prospect of gravity to projectiles, so they lower over time. So goats, their fireballs are actually going to fall to the ground over a certain period of time, and or distance. And so,
blowing up porcupines.
and I think this came from the idea of things that explode on death from the porcupines. I think they were, that's what I call them anyway. Oh, on a side note, I think it was Noogie that died. Was it Noogie that died from a boss that exploded after it died?
Yeah.
Screw you, GGG. You can get rid of that.
It was a really long time. Like he definitely could have.
Yeah, but it's loot. You're looking at boss loot.
Yeah.
That's what you're playing for.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But no, so just the prospect that projectiles slowly fade to the ground over a certain distance.
And you can dodge roll them.
Right. Mark said that that is likely going to eliminate off-screen damage. And that wasn't even the question, but he threw that in there. So
awesome.
That was extremely exciting because to me, it doesn't really matter the changes you make to a game. Like the quality of life only matters when the game is fun to play, right? If the game isn't fun to play, but going through the menus is easy, well, that just makes the menu system easy. But the current game, the current situation, visual clarity is a massive problem in Path of Exile 1. That's something they're hopefully fixing. Jonathan said that despite the game's not intentionally going to be slower, hopefully the speed of the skills is going to allow you the opportunity to see more of what's happening. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, there's a lot of garbage deaths, garbage damage where you just can't see it happening. And so clarity for what's in front of you and off-screen crap for things that aren't. So hopefully, like all boss situations, because I don't see boss projectiles not being able to go the distance of a screen. Hopefully they're always on screen with all the running around that we've seen in Act 1 bosses. But that was extremely exciting for me because if off-screen damage still continued in a game like this, there's only so excited you could be for it. And that's honestly the way that it is, right? So I was really excited for that. What other notes did I make? Right, no crafting bench, telegraphed boss fights. There's a lot. Every single boss fight, it looked like you could easily tell where the damage was going to be, or there actually was a small graphic that they were making fun of in the
there were
last presentation, but
had it like that. Like there's a difference between like a telegraphed like rectangle that's going to show where it's going to hit versus there was the one electric boss, which both you and I saw early on, and both were really impressed with how telegraphed the attacks looked, but it had a triangle attack. Yeah. That to me is a little bit different because it wasn't the same. I mean, granted, yes, it is a telegraphed thing on the ground, but it actually looks like part of the skill that the boss is using, which is really cool.
And it didn't show up as the boss was winding up. It showed up. So just like our characters can change direction mid swing or mid click, whatever it is, to make it a little bit more authentic. Bosses can do that too. Enemies can do that too. And so the boss has this big slam coming and it's coming, but it was only once where it was going to land was definitive that the telegraph showed up. So it wasn't like when the boss first started sweeping up and then the telegraph started moving around. It was just the boss is doing this, oh crap, where's it going to be? And then the telegraph showed and you didn't have a lot of time to get out of the way, but I really did like it.
Do you remember so there's one of the bosses was the blind something. We saw him fought a couple times.
This white horn thing
came up like from the crowd and actually
good for that kid, by the way. Way to go, buddy.
One of the, I shouldn't say kid, I don't know, the guy that
probably older than us, but looks younger than us.
He's definitely younger than us. But the one thing I liked about that fight was the dodge rolling the attacks was very Dark Souls-ish. Like you could see the swipe coming in and your character could dodge roll through it.
Right.
Like it reminded me very much of Dark Souls in that attack. I like that. I like that fight
for sure. This is something that I think they did a good job of the first convention, but they did a very good job the second convention. But this is your first broadcasted convention. You wanted to shout out the production value of.
I thought the production value was great. I thought it was really
Twitch
good
presentation. Yeah,
I thought it was great. They had multiple camera angles. They had, I love the shots in between sessions. The audio was for the most part quite good. There were, a couple issues with people's mics, but overall, like I just thought I was really impressed. I thought they did a really great job.
It really didn't seem to have any glitches. Things started punctually, which was great. Pardon me?
Besides mobile.
That's very true.
But
That
otherwise,
is
it was
really
great.
disappointing. I mean, I am glad they only gave mobile half an hour.
Yeah.
In total, but I feel bad for the guy that's putting his heart and soul into it.
Mhm.
But I guess really silly that for some reason the broadcast didn't work for that time. Like it makes it seem like they didn't even try broadcasting it to begin with.
Yep.
But yeah, kudos to the production value of the
Yeah, I
thing.
thought it was really good.
What else, Justin? The default portal.
Looks so much better. They better keep that in. If they put back the damn blue thing, I'm gonna be pissed.
Right, or that stupid purple Prime sign up portal.
Yep.
No, this one looks.
It looked really good.
It looks like a default portal.
Yeah,
but it's
got like
nice.
a shaperish look
It's
to it.
nice.
Like it's cool.
Yeah.
It actually looks like one that you can get in the store, but I liked it.
Yeah. One thing that was a little disappointing to me, just because we did see a lot of gameplay from a lot of the streamers, and then the demos were quite nice as well. And it was nice seeing all that gameplay. But for me, it was disappointing that the monster modifiers were just from the PoE 1 database.
Yeah. Again,
And
that's just not a being ready to go. Again,
I get
weird.
it, but
Weird. It's in the same.
It was just, that was one of the extra things I'm excited to see. Like, okay, so what are some of the new ideas they're coming up with? Right. When I start seeing it rotates damage mitigation on there, I'm like, really?
Well, they could not have had a worse representation of the shittiness of some of their mods than when Noogie played and got Mana Siphoner with the pylon.
Right. And so he's got the stupid
fucked.
lightning heralds going.
He's dead. If he jumps into that circle,
Yeah.
he's dead.
Oh, what
He
a
was dead in
great reminder for them, though, to like.
I
you
love that he
want
was like
melee-
neon.
Yeah, he's like Neon. Really? And he's like, don't get mad at me. That was
Yeah.
bad luck. But at the same time,
Should never be able to happen.
no, that
Ever.
stuff's garbage. Absolute garbage. Especially if you're like, it's almost like GGG told everyone, okay, you have to play warrior and something else because we want to let everyone know that melee's okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So,
Which
but no,
melee did look great.
did.
I actually did like the look of it, but
it did that. But overall, now that the hype and disappointment of the what didn't happen in the keynote presentation, and of course the distance of the dates for PoE 2, now that that's like to us, that was yesterday. In a way, it's old news. We're now prepared for at least another year of Path of Exile 1. Everything that we learned about PoE 2 is really exciting, really cool. Disappointment's gone, but life goes on. We have another year left, and lots of really cool stuff to look forward to. Like, it's all very exciting. I just, as a minion, like 99% of my stuff is minion. I am disappointed none of that got answered. Spirit seems interesting, but that's nice. I know that all those values can be increased or decreased. Like, that's not an issue in terms of the balance, but it would have just been really nice to see just a little bit. And I mean, when's the last time you heard GGG say zombie that many times in the last 10 years? So I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't give up on zombies. Maybe I should give up on the Reaper again.
also,
I don't know.
though, are we not really coming out with something other than zombies? Like, the witch summoner should not still be the witch summoner of a necromancer. I hope there's something different to the class.
That there's like 2 summoner classes.
Well, a PoE 2 summoner. It's a new game. You can't just do a friggin' necromancer as the summoner. Like, come
But
on.
look at the other classes. What else is going to be a summoner?
Well,
They
I'm
listed
fine
them
with
all.
the witch being a summoner,
Yes.
but don't make it like come up with something else.
Oh, sorry. I forgot. There's going to be 36 ascendancies now.
Mhm. Yeah, but I'm not taking into account PoE 1. I'm just saying, if PoE 2 is going to be its own new game and you're developing all new stuff, well, then don't have zombies. Or if you're going to have zombies, have something else. Don't make that
You
the
need-
de facto
you need more.
starter minion.
Yeah.
But it sounds like witch is like maybe not really ready to go, so maybe that'll change as they go along. They got 10 months.
I don't know.
11 months.
I mean, I am surprised that there's certain things they haven't considered with all the decision making that they've done. It's like they're going in some sort of linear fashion with their decision making, and some stuff's like, okay, how are we going to make this work with the decisions we've already made, as opposed to the method of, we want this to work. How's that going to work with this? And then dealing with all those hurdles at the beginning, because there's some pretty basic stuff that they were asked about that they were like, I don't know, we haven't gotten there yet. And I was surprised at how many. I didn't write down the specific ones. Of course, Val was the one that we heard from yesterday's speech, but
There were a number of them.
But there were quite a few more where it's like, you know what? I don't know. We'll get there when we get there. What was one that I was actually quite disappointed with? Oh, right. Jonathan said it was in regards to the death recap that they were asked about. And this was when he was on the panel with the three others. And he answered the question. I don't know if it was directed to him or not, but he answered. And he was like, well, you know, like it's probably something, it's not something I'm against. It's something we could probably do, but it is quite complicated. And, you know, went on with a couple other sentences. And then at the end, he finished with, but, you know, I'm busy.
Well, Neon said after that, you're going to know why you died. And I was like, maybe in a boss fight.
Oh, but yeah, he was referencing the visuals. Like it's going to be a lot easier to see how.
But it was in response to it was right after Jonathan. But my feeling was like, well, you're not always just dying to a boss. Like, okay, if I just stood under a slam, yes, I know why I died. But if I was just fighting a big pack of mobs, maybe I don't know why I died. So we'll see.
There was a boss that I think it was Neon in the boss section, and he was talking about, and it was awesome how much he was nerding out about the bosses. That's exactly what I wanted from the presentation. But he was saying like this certain attack does 50% lightning and 50% chaos. And I'm like, that easy to see?
Oh yeah,
you know, like am I gonna know if I die to that barf that I need to up my lightning and chaos resist? Because there's tons of stuff where it's just a boss in Path of Exile 1, and you're like, well, what kind of damage is that? That's not a color that matches the three other elemental types. Doesn't match chaos.
Like in the help section. Don't worry.
I wonder if they weren't allowed to ask about a help section. I'm surprised there wasn't any conversation about that at all.
There's other things people are excited about. That's not really like at the top of the list.
I am
for most. Okay, so we're gonna wrap up, but here's the thing: ExileCon 2023 is now done. What's your overview, your overall feeling and thought towards it? How did you find it? What are your final thoughts?
About ExileCon or about Path of Exile 2?
About the event, ExileCon 2023.
I'm very excited. I'm extremely happy with the direction that almost everything is going. I'm nervous about what the game's going to look like from a filter perspective, but that's because not enough, and not a criticism to others, but that there just wasn't enough questions regarding loot drop and quant, or like how often it's going to drop, the frequency of it, and the expectation of crafting. There just wasn't enough questions regarding that to get a full picture regarding that. So as a filter creator, and that's something I've been passionate about, of course, that's something I'm nervous about. But overall, the entire direction of the game is exactly where I want the game to go. It seems to like it's going slower. It seems like they're not simplifying the game. It's becoming more simple to understand, but it's still getting very complex, but so much more intuitive. I love that they're just making decisions that they think are best. It's not about what they think they can appease us with. It's just, this is what we think is best, and this is what we're doing with it. And so I think every direction they're going with the game is fantastic. And at the end of the day, I am very excited. And it was nice for us to have conversations off mic as well, to remind ourselves that whatever time frame they need, no matter how the marketing was ahead of time, whatever time they need to actually release this and make this solid, take it, because we're the kind of fans where we aren't just looking for a game for ourselves. So that's primary, because that's where we stand as you know, and part of the consumer. But we love the company. We want them to succeed, and we really want them to have a killer start. So overall, I have almost everything is very positive, and I'm very excited. How about you?
Overall, I think it was great. I think the event was awesome. I loved hearing about PoE 2. The 322 looks fun. I love hearing from their developers. Their enthusiasm and love for their game is really refreshing to see. You know, we haven't seen a lot of their people talk in quite a long time. So hearing them talk about it and being so excited about it was awesome. It was a great thing to watch. I think my experience with it got better today as we went along, and I kind of had a good conversation with myself, and I think I referenced that in the first part of this episode. So it got better after I'd had that talk with myself. Justin takes long dumps, so he has long talks with himself. Me and myself just have to talk sometimes, but So I think the event was awesome. I'm very excited for the direction they're going with PoE 2. I have so many questions, but we're still so far away that I'm not going to get answers for a long time. I will still, though, despite my conversation with myself, despite everything I'm feeling towards my excitement for the game, I think this was a poorly timed convention. I can't understand why they did it now. I don't understand why they have a convention where it's 2/3 of the acts are finished. Not even half of the classes were playable. We never saw a skill tree. We never saw
so much wasn't ready.
There were so many things that weren't there, and it just confuses me as to why there was a convention. Like I feel like a convention would have been better served right before the beta, the closed beta, where everything can be shown, at least in its current state. So I loved the event. It was very fun to watch. This was the first one I've watched on Twitch. It's long freaking days. Holy crap. And it was really cool to see. Again, I love seeing them from the developers, but that is the one thing that does stick out in my mind a little bit is just this question of why now. Like, what was the benefit to them to doing it at this point in the development cycle versus waiting a little bit longer? So,
and why are people leaving early?
Yeah, I'm just giving up on that.
It's not over. Maybe the race is still on.
We're gonna go finish the last
maybe Chris has like a goodbye.
Chris says goodbye. And award everyone a car for leaving or something. I don't know.
Drive home.
Yeah, but I loved it. That's a part that sticks out to me is a question of like, why now? I don't get the significance to at this point in the development cycle to do it. But that aside, they did a fantastic event. I'm so happy for the people that went out there. I think the experience would have been amazing. We heard some people in our Discord that were just having a blast there and picked up some awesome stuff from that place and met a lot of great people. So I think the event itself was great. I think it was such a cool thing for them to do. I'm a little confused as to the timing for it, but that doesn't take away from the amazingness of what it was, what we got to see, the excitement for PoE 2 that's coming. I think 322 looks like a really fun league, and yeah, it was fun. It was fun to hang out with you. Like, we've never done this since we were kids.
Not since Sun Peaks, man. I don't think we've spent this much time together since we used to go boarding together.
Yeah, so it was fun. It was fun. It was a fun weekend, and we're gonna wrap this up, and I'm gonna try and finish this again.
One more cool shout out is how specters are changing. You basically consume the.
It's a Pokemon, gotta catch them all.
Yeah, but then it just converts the gems. So if you want a different specter, you get a different gem.
Yeah, it's interesting.
That is cool, but that solves the corpse bit. Is you just have that permanent summon now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but yeah,
cool.
I think it's kind of interesting. Cool. Is that a support that connects to Race Spectre then? Or is it the actual active skill, but then you can't have multiple specters? I really don't want to get into it because we need to wrap this up. I got to get this edited.
And we need to see what Chris's goodbye is like.
I've never been this tight to getting an episode edited, rendered, because it's going to be like a 2.5 hour episode that has to get rendered. So anyway.
Hurry up, man. Hurry up.
Let's wrap this up. Patrons.
We'd love
you know what? Hold on. Forever Exiled. Episode 199. I'm Justin, aka Tags.
And I'm Tyler, Wrecker of Days.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us for this super long episode. If you made it this long, you are
superstar.
Superstar, exactly. Patrons, we'll see you in After Dark. Good luck. It is a beautiful 2-hour disaster. It's amazing. We had so much fun doing it. So hopefully you enjoy it. Everybody else, we'll see you next week. In episode 200, it's a milestone for us that is going to be treated like a normal episode because this week has killed me. This episode has done it. This was our special. We should have just released like a 10-minute 199 and made this 200. But anyway, yeah, we'll see you everybody next week in episode 200. Thanks again. Make sure you, information down below. We've got a website, foreverexiled.com, or on Twitter, foreverexiled82. We have a very fun Discord. You should come and say hi. Have a great time with the rest of us. Patrons, other ways to support the podcast are down below and on our website. Don't forget to hit the 5 stars on Spotify and Apple. And Ty,
you can tell where it clicked. What was I supposed to say?
You were waiting to say something.
I was laughing because you can tell where it clicked with you, where your goodbye, all of a sudden it was like, automation kicked in.
Normally I'm on the computer and I'm like, for some reason it's just second nature.
But we hope everybody had a fantastic ExileCon, no matter where you watched it. We very glad we set the time aside to gather all this information and nerd out with everybody. So hopefully you enjoyed nerding out with us. We enjoyed nerding out with you. And thank you so much for your listens each week.
Yep.
You're the best.
Kudos, GGG.